My boss promised me a promotion for 3 years. The day I finally quit, he begged me not to leave after I exposed his secret. I placed the letter on the mahogany desk. It wasn't in an envelope. I wanted him to see the bold text of the header the moment it hit the wood. Resignation has a specific shape to it, a sharpness that cuts through the clutter of a messy office. Gary was on his phone, scrolling through something irrelevant, probably looking for new golf clubs he couldn't actually afford. He didn't look up for a full 10 seconds. That was his power move. It was the move he had used on me for 3 years. Ignore the person in the room until they feel small, then grant them the privilege of your attention. When he finally flicked his eyes toward me, he didn't look at the paper. He looked at my tie. He hated that tie. It was a simple blue pattern, something I'd worn for a decade. Gary was all about brands, about flash, about projecting an image of success that he hadn't earned. He smirked, that tight, condescending twitch of the lip that made every employee in the logistics department want to walk into traffic. "What's this, Bill?" he asked, finally acknowledging the paper. "Another request for new chairs? I told you, the budget is tight this quarter." "Read it," I said. My voice didn't shake. I expected it to, honestly. I had spent the last week rehearsing this moment in the mirror while shaving, terrified that I would crumble. I had a mortgage. I had a daughter in her second year of college. I had a truck that needed a new transmission. Stability was my god, and I was about to commit blasphemy. But in that moment, looking at his dismissive face, the fear evaporated. It was replaced by a cold, hard clarity. Gary sighed, a theatrical exhale that signaled how inconvenienced he was by my very existence. He picked up the paper with 2 fingers, as if it were soiled. He scanned it. I watched his eyes. They widened, just a fraction. Then he laughed. It was a dry, hollow sound. "Is this a joke? You're resigning? Bill, come on. You've been here for 20 years. Where are you going to go? You're 54 years old. The market isn't exactly screaming for guys who still use paper calendars." "I'm giving my 2 weeks, Gary. Strictly as a courtesy to Mr. Henderson. If it were up to me, I'd be walking out the door right now." Gary dropped the paper back onto the desk. He leaned back in his chair, lacing his fingers behind his head. He wasn't scared yet. He was arrogant. He thought he owned me. He thought the promise he had dangled in front of my face for 36 months was still enough to keep me in line. "Sit down, Bill," he said. "I prefer to stand." "Sit down," he snapped, the facade slipping for a second. I remained standing. "Suit yourself," he said, smoothing his tie. "Look, I get it. You're frustrated. Ideally, we would have moved you up to operations director last year. But you know the situation. The market is volatile. My father-in-law is old school. He wants to see more growth before we expand the executive team. I'm fighting for you, Bill. I really am. In fact, I was just talking to the old man about you yesterday. We're thinking next quarter. Definitely next quarter." "You said that 3 years ago," I said. "You said that when I took over the shipping routes. You said that when I fixed the inventory disaster in the warehouse. You said that when I worked through Christmas because you were in Aspen. And I meant it." Gary said, his smile returning, slick and oily. "But these things take time. You're a vital part of this team. The backbone. If you leave now, you're throwing away a pension, seniority, and a promotion that is literally right around the corner. Do you really want to start over at some entry-level gig hauling boxes?" He didn't know. He had no idea what I had found in the archives 3 days ago. He had no idea that I wasn't just quitting. I was pulling the pin on a grenade he had buried under the floorboards 5 years ago. "I'm not starting over, Gary," I said quietly. "And I'm not waiting for next quarter. Because I know about the phantom vendor accounts." The color drained from his face, so fast it looked like a magic trick. His hands unclasped from behind his head and fell to the desk with a heavy thud. The smirk was gone. The arrogance vanished. In its place was the terrified look of a man who realizes the lion he's been whipping is no longer in the cage. "Close the door," he whispered. I didn't move. "I think I'll leave it open." That was the moment the balance of power shifted. For 3 years, I had been the desperate subordinate begging for scraps. Now I was the judge, and he was the one on trial. To understand why that moment felt so good, you have to understand the sheer weight of the last 3 years. You have to understand the culture of Henderson Logistics. This wasn't some fly-by-night startup with beanbag chairs and ping-pong tables. This was a legacy company. Arthur Henderson started it with 2 trucks and a strong back 40 years ago. He built it into the premier logistics supplier in the tri-state area. Arthur was a good man. A hard man, but fair. He knew the name of every driver, every warehouse picker, and every mechanic. I started there when I was 24. I loaded trucks. I drove routes. I worked my way into dispatch, then into fleet management. I gave that company the best years of my life. I missed soccer games. I missed anniversaries. I stayed late to fix problems I didn't create because I believed in the mission. I believed that hard work was the currency of success. Then came Gary. Gary was Arthur's son-in-law. He married Arthur's daughter, Clara, a sweet woman who had no head for business. When Arthur had his first heart attack 5 years ago, he stepped back. He didn't retire, but he stopped coming in every day. He handed the day-to-day reins to Gary. Gary was a salesman. He could sell ice to an Eskimo, as the saying goes, but he couldn't deliver the ice. He knew nothing about logistics. He knew nothing about fuel surcharges, driver fatigue laws, or supply chain optimization. He viewed the company not as a machine that needed oiling, but as a piggy bank that needed shaking. The first year was fine. The momentum of Arthur's leadership kept the ship moving. But by year 2, cracks started to show. Maintenance schedules were delayed. Vendors weren't getting paid on time. Morale in the warehouse tanked. That's when Gary called me into his office for the first time. "Bill," he had said, pouring me a scotch I didn't want at 10 in the morning. "I need a favor. The old man is breathing down my neck about the efficiency numbers in the routing department. I need someone to take charge down there. Clean it up. Get us back in the green." "I'm already managing the fleet, Gary," I had told him. "That's a 60-hour week as it is." I know. You're a machine. That's why I'm asking. Look, the operations director spot is opening up next year when old man Jenkins retires. You do this for me, you fix the routing, you get the costs down, and that chair is yours. Guaranteed. A 30% raise, stock options, the corner office. I just need you to grind for me for 12 months. I took the bait. I wanted that title. I wanted to be able to tell my wife, Sarah, that we could finally afford to redo the kitchen and pay for our daughter's tuition without taking out loans. I took on the extra work. I worked 80-hour weeks. I fired lazy dispatchers. I renegotiated fuel contracts. I digitized the routing system, dragging the drivers kicking and screaming into the 21st century. At the end of the year, the numbers were beautiful. Efficiency was up 20%. Costs were down 15%. I walked into Gary's office, report in hand, ready to claim my prize. "Bill. My man." Gary had cheered, clapping me on the back. "This is incredible work. Truly. Arthur is going to be thrilled." "So about the director position," I said. "Jenkins retires next week." Gary's face fell. He put on a mask of pained sympathy that I would come to recognize as his default setting for bad news. "Ah, right. About that. Look, Bill, we've hit a snag. The market is weird right now. Fuel prices are fluctuating. Arthur is worried about overhead. He wants to hold off on filling that position for a few months. Just until Q2. Keep doing what you're doing, though. You are the acting director in everything but name. The title and the money are coming. I promise. Just hang in there." I swallowed my anger. I trusted the process. I trusted the company. I went back to work. That was the cycle. Every 6 months, there was a new excuse. A recession scare. A lost client. A restructuring. Meanwhile, Gary bought a new Porsche. He renovated his office with Italian marble. He took 3-week vacations to Europe while I was fielding calls from angry drivers at 3 a.m. The resentment built up like sludge in an engine. But the breaking point wasn't the work. It wasn't even the lies about the promotion. It was the disrespect to the drivers. We had a driver named Mike. Mike had been with the company longer than me. He was 60 years old, with bad knees and a heart of gold. He drove the long-haul routes that the younger guys refused to take. One night, Mike's truck broke down in the middle of a blizzard in North Dakota. The heater failed. He called dispatch. He called the emergency line. Gary had cut the budget for the after-hours emergency service to save money. The call went to voicemail. Mike sat in that cab for 6 hours in sub-zero temperatures before a state trooper found him. He lost 2 toes to frostbite. He could never drive again. When I confronted Gary about it, he shrugged. Ideally, he should have checked his equipment better before leaving the hub. It's an unfortunate incident, Bill, but we can't bleed money on premium roadside assistance for every flat tire. It wasn't a flat tire, Gary. He almost froze to death. He's getting workers' comp. Let it go. That was the day the loyalty died. That was the day I stopped looking at Gary as a boss and started looking at him as an enemy. I decided I was going to leave. But I wasn't just going to leave. I was going to make sure he couldn't hurt anyone else. I started looking closer at the numbers. I was managing the fleet and the routing, so I saw the operational expenses. But I didn't see the vendor accounts. That was purely accounting, and Gary kept accounting locked down tight. He had fired the old CFO and replaced him with a young guy named Kevin, a terrified kid fresh out of college who signed whatever Gary put in front of him. I needed to see the vendor list. It took me 3 months to find a way in. I'm not a hacker. I don't know how to code. But I know people. I knew the janitor, the receptionist, and the IT guy who came in on Tuesdays to update the servers. The IT guy, Sam, was a good kid. He was always complaining about how Gary refused to upgrade the firewall. One Tuesday, I brought Sam a homemade lasagna. My wife makes the best lasagna in the state. It's mostly cheese and meat, barely any pasta. It puts you in a food coma for hours. Sam, I said, while he was scraping the plate clean in the break room. I'm having trouble with the legacy archive. I need to pull up some old invoices from 2019 for a tax audit on the fleet. My permissions seem to be glitching. Gary locked down the archive last month, Sam said, patting his stomach. Only executive level has access now. Yeah, I know. But he's in Cabo this week. And the auditors are coming on Monday. I don't want to call him on vacation, you know how he gets. Sam nodded. Everyone knew how Gary got when interrupted on vacation. I can grant you temporary admin access, Sam said. Just for the afternoon. Don't tell Kevin. My lips are sealed. Sam typed a few commands into his laptop, and suddenly, the grayed-out folders on my screen turned yellow. I was in. I spent the next 4 hours combing through 5 years of financial data. I didn't know exactly what I was looking for, but I knew the routing efficiency savings I had generated hadn't shown up in the company's bottom line. We were saving $200,000 a quarter on fuel and maintenance, yet the quarterly reports showed us breaking even. Where was the money going? I found it in the consulting services ledger. There were monthly payments, ranging from $15,000 to $25,000, going to a company called Apex Strategic Solutions. The invoices were vague. Market analysis. Efficiency consulting. Leadership coaching. I had never heard of Apex Strategic Solutions. I had never seen a consultant in the building. I looked up the address on the invoices. It was a P.O. box in a strip mall 3 towns over. I looked up the incorporation documents on the state's public registry website. The registered agent for Apex Strategic Solutions was a woman named Monica Vane. The name sounded familiar. I racked my brain. Where had I heard that name? Then it hit me. 2 years ago, the company Christmas party. Gary had brought a client, because his wife was sick. A tall, striking woman in a red dress. He had introduced her as Monica. I did a quick Facebook search. Monica Vane was a real estate agent. And judging by her public photos, she was also very fond of expensive vacations that coincidentally aligned perfectly with the dates Gary was away on business. But that wasn't the smoking gun. A boss having an affair and funneling money to a mistress is bad, but it's not necessarily business ending if the company is private. Arthur Henderson might fire him, but he might also just hush it up to save his daughter the embarrassment. I needed more. I dug deeper into Apex. It wasn't just consulting fees. There were procurement fees. Apex was technically listed as a vendor for office supplies and warehouse equipment. I cross-referenced the Apex invoices with our inventory logs. On January 12th, we paid Apex $45,000 for warehouse racking systems Unit B. I walked down to Unit B. The racking systems were the same rusted steel beams that had been there since 1998. On March 4th, we paid Apex $32,000 for fleet GPS upgrades. We hadn't upgraded the GPS units. I would know. I managed the fleet. Gary wasn't just skimming a little off the top for a girlfriend. He was systematically looting the company. He was creating fake capital expenditure projects, billing the company through a shell corporation, and pocketing the cash. He was stealing hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. And here was the kicker: the money wasn't coming from profit. The company wasn't making enough profit to cover this theft. The money was coming from the maintenance budget, the driver safety fund, and the capital reserve. Gary was cannibalizing the company to pay for his lifestyle. He was literally selling the engine parts to buy gas. I printed everything. I printed the invoices. I printed the incorporation papers. I printed the inventory logs that proved the equipment was never purchased. I made 3 copies. One for me, one for a lawyer, and one for Arthur Henderson. But I wasn't going to Arthur yet. I needed to secure my exit first. By framing the most loyal man in this building? Arthur asked. Arthur turned to me. Bill, I resigned yesterday, Arthur, I said. I tried to give him a chance to walk away with dignity. For your sake. For Clara's sake. But he tried to destroy me instead. Arthur nodded slowly. He looked at the lawyers. Draft the termination papers, Arthur said. For cause. Embezzlement. Fraud. And call the district attorney. No. Gary screamed. You can't. Dad. Clara will leave me. She should, Arthur said coldly. Get him out of my sight. Security arrived then. They didn't drag me out. They escorted Gary out. He was crying, begging, making a scene that would be the talk of the warehouse for 20 years. When he was gone, Arthur slumped in his chair. He looked 10 years older. I'm sorry, Bill, he said. I should have seen it. I let family blind me. It happens to the best of us, Arthur. You'll stay, of course, Arthur said. Director of Operations. The job is yours. I'll match whatever offer you have. I'll add 10%. I need you to clean this mess up. I looked at the old man. I looked at the company I had built with my sweat for 2 decades. It would be so easy to say yes. To take the win. To be the hero. But I thought about the 3 years of lies. I thought about Mike and his frozen toes. I thought about the stress that had nearly given me an ulcer. I thought about the culture that allowed a man like Gary to thrive for so long while good men suffered. The trust was broken. You can patch a tire, but you can't patch trust. I can't, Arthur, I said gently. I accepted a position at Miller & Sons this morning. I gave my word. Arthur looked crushed, but he nodded. He understood. He was from the generation where a man's word was iron. I understand, he said. You're a good man, Bill. The best I ever hired. I walked out of that office for the final time. I felt lighter. The aftermath. The fallout was nuclear. Gary was charged with grand larceny and fraud. It turned out the debts were massive gambling losses from online sports betting. He had lost nearly $500,000 of the company's money. Clara divorced him within a month. He's currently serving a 3-year sentence in a minimum security facility. Arthur Henderson came out of semi-retirement to run the company, but his heart wasn't in it. He sold Henderson Logistics to a national conglomerate a year later. The corporate raiders came in, stripped it for parts, and laid off half the staff. But not my guys. When I moved to Miller & Sons, I didn't just take 3 dispatchers. Over the next 6 months, I hired Mike, the driver who lost his toes, to run our safety training division. He sits at a desk, drinks coffee, and scares the hell out of rookies with stories about what happens when you don't check your equipment. He loves it. I hired Kevin, the young CFO. He's a good kid, just needed a backbone. He's my lead analyst now. And I hired about 20 of the best drivers and warehouse guys from Henderson before the buyout happened. I got my promotion. I'm the VP of Regional Operations now. I make more money than I ever thought I would. My kitchen is renovated. My daughter's tuition is paid. But the best part isn't the money. About 6 months ago, I was at a hardware store on a Saturday morning. I was buying mulch. I saw a guy in a faded Henderson Logistics polo shirt pushing carts in the parking lot. He looked familiar. It was Gary. He was out on parole/work release or something, I guess. He looked rough. Thinner. Grayer. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a permanent squint of defeat. He saw me. He stopped pushing the carts. I could have said something. I could have gloated. I could have asked him how the market volatility was treating him. I could have asked him if he had any openings for a director position. But I didn't. I just nodded at him. One professional to another. He didn't nod back. He just looked down at his shoes and pushed his line of carts toward the store. I got in my truck, a new one finally, and drove home. The lesson? Loyalty is a currency. Spend it wisely. If you spend it on a boss who doesn't respect the value of the coin, you'll go bankrupt. But if you invest it in yourself, and in the people who actually have your back, the returns are infinite. And always check the vendor invoices. Part 2, The Fallout and the New Beginning. A lot of you have asked for more details on what happened in the immediate aftermath, specifically regarding the dinner from hell, and how the transition to the new job went. I realized I skimmed over some of the most satisfying parts of the justice that was served. So, let's rewind a bit to the weeks following the explosion. The transition to Miller & Sons wasn't seamless. Leaving a place after 20 years is like a divorce. You know where the bodies are buried, you know the quirks of the heating system, you know which coffee machine actually works. Walking into a new building felt alien. Jim Miller, my new boss, was the opposite of Gary. He was a loud, boisterous man who wore suspenders and actually knew how to drive a forklift. On my first day, he didn't show me my office. He took me to the loading dock. "Bill," he said, pointing at a chaotic staging area. "This is a mess. Fix it." "What's the budget?" I asked, conditioned by years of Gary's penny pinching. Jim laughed. "Budget? Spend what you need to make it flow. If it makes us faster, it pays for itself. Just don't buy gold-plated toilets." It was liberating. I spent the first month just reorganizing the workflow. I implemented the systems Gary had rejected for being too expensive. Productivity soared. The drivers were happier because they weren't waiting around for 3 hours to get loaded. But the ghost of Henderson Logistics kept haunting me. About 3 weeks into my new job, I got a call from Clara, Gary's ex-wife, Arthur's daughter. I had known Clara for years. She was a kind woman, totally blinded by love for a con man. "Bill," she sounded wrecked. Her voice was raspy from crying. "Can we talk? I need to understand." I met her at a diner halfway between our towns. She looked like she hadn't slept in a week. "Did he really do it?" she asked, clutching a cup of tea. "Did he really steal from Daddy? Or was it a mistake?" This was the hardest part. Destroying Gary was easy, he was a villain. But breaking the heart of a nice woman was collateral damage I hadn't fully prepared for. "It wasn't a mistake, Clara," I said softly. "He created fake companies. He forged signatures. He was sending money to other people." "The woman," she whispered. "Monica. I saw the police report." I nodded. "I'm sorry." "He told me he was investing for our future," she said, a bitter laugh escaping her lips. "He said he was building a nest egg so we could buy a vacation home in Italy. He was buying her a condo in Boca. He used people, Clara. He used me. He used your father. He used you." She took a deep breath and wiped her eyes. "You know what the worst part is? He called me from jail yesterday. He didn't ask about the kids. He didn't ask how my dad was doing. He asked if I could bail him out because the mattress was uncomfortable." "That sounds like Gary." "I'm selling the house," she said. "I'm paying Daddy back. Every cent. I don't care if I have to live in an apartment for the rest of my life. I won't let his theft be the legacy of this family." Clara had more integrity in her little finger than Gary had in his whole body. The ripple effect. Meanwhile, back at Henderson Logistics, things were crumbling. Without me running the fleet, and without Gary, even though he was useless, he was a warm body, the place went into chaos. Arthur tried to step in, but his health was failing. He hired an interim manager, a guy named Steve who had managed a retail store but never a logistics hub. Steve was a disaster. He tried to implement a just-in-time inventory system that resulted in our biggest client, a regional grocery chain, having empty shelves for 3 days. That's when I got the call from the client. Bill. It was Dave, the logistics manager for the grocery chain. We had barbecued together. I hear you're at Miller now. I am, Dave. Look, I love Arthur. I respect him. But this new guy, Steve? He's a clown. He sent 3 refrigerated trucks to the wrong state yesterday. I have spoiled produce and angry store managers. I can't do this anymore. What are you saying, Dave? I'm saying, if Miller & Sons can handle the volume, I'm bringing the contract to you. But only if you personally oversee the account. It was a contract worth $4 million a year. I walked into Jim Miller's office. Jim, we need more trucks. Why? Because I just landed the Grocery Mart account. Jim dropped his coffee mug. It didn't break carpet, but coffee went everywhere. You're kidding. They're signing tomorrow. But we need to ramp up capacity immediately. That brings me to my next point. I know where we can get trucks and drivers fast. I called Arthur. This was a delicate phone call. I was essentially stealing his biggest client after he had already been betrayed by his son-in-law. But I knew the reality. Henderson Logistics was sinking. The vultures were circling. If the contract went to a national carrier, the local drivers would lose their jobs. Arthur, it's Bill. I heard. Arthur sounded weak. Dave called me. He's pulling the contract. I know. He's bringing it to us. There was a long silence. You're twisting the knife, Bill, Arthur said, sounding defeated. No, Arthur. I'm throwing a life raft. You can't service that contract right now. You don't have the manpower or the management. If they go to a national carrier, they'll bring in their own fleets. Your trucks will sit idle. Your drivers will be laid off. So what do you propose? Subcontract to us. Lease us your fleet. We'll hire your drivers as contractors to service the route. You keep the revenue from the truck leases, your guys keep their jobs, and we handle the management. It keeps cash flowing into Henderson so you can stabilize. It was a generous offer. Jim Miller thought I was crazy to help a competitor, but he trusted me. Arthur cried. I could hear him weeping over the phone. Why would you do that? He asked. After everything Gary did to you? Because Gary isn't the company, Arthur. You are. And Mike is. And Tony is. I'm not doing it for the logo. I'm doing it for the people. We signed the deal. It saved Henderson Logistics from immediate bankruptcy. It allowed Arthur to sell the company a year later for a decent price, rather than a fire sale liquidation. The confrontation in court. I had to testify at Gary's trial. That was an experience. Gary's defense lawyer was a slimy guy who tried to paint me as a disgruntled employee who had engineered the fraud to frame his boss. Mr. Simmons, the lawyer paced in front of the witness stand. Isn't it true that you felt passed over for promotion? Yes, I said. Isn't it true you were angry at the defendant? Yes. So, isn't it plausible that you used your superior knowledge of the company's systems to create these fake invoices? I looked at the jury. Normal people. A teacher, a mechanic, a nurse. I know how to route a truck from Chicago to Miami in 24 hours, I said. I know how to calculate fuel loads. I do not know how to incorporate a shell company in the Cayman Islands, which is where the Apex money eventually went. But you know who does? The defendant, who has a degree in finance and spent 3 weeks in Grand Cayman scouting locations in 2021. The prosecutor presented the travel records. Gary had indeed been in the Caymans. Then came the audio recording. I hadn't mentioned this earlier because I wasn't sure if it was legal to record, one-party consent state, fortunately. But on the day I quit, when I was in Gary's office, I had my phone recording in my pocket. The court played the tape. Gary's voice, tinny and desperate, I'll pay it back. I swear. I have a deal coming through. Don't leave. If you leave and take this to him, you destroy my family. The jury looked at Gary. He had his head in his hands. The guilty verdict took 2 hours. Life goes on. It's been 3 years since that day. Miller and Sons has doubled in size. I'm making more money than I know what to do with, so I started a scholarship fund for the children of logistics workers. The first recipient was Mike's granddaughter. I still see the guys from the old days. We meet for beers on Fridays. The trauma of the Gary years has become war stories we laugh about. Remember when he tried to make us wear ties in the warehouse? Tony asked last week, laughing so hard beer came out his nose. Remember when he bought that espresso machine for his office while the forklift had no brakes? Mike chimed in. We laughed. But underneath it, there's a seriousness. We all know how close we came to ruin. I saw Arthur's obituary in the paper last month. He passed away in his sleep. I went to the funeral. Clara was there. She looked better. Healthy. She hugged me. He spoke highly of you until the end, she said. He left you something. I was surprised. He didn't have to do that. He wanted to. She handed me an envelope. Inside was a letter and a check. The letter read, Bill, I should have promoted you 10 years ago. I let blood dictate business, and it was the biggest mistake of my life. You were the son I should have had. Thank you for saving what you could. Arthur. The check was for $50,000. The exact amount Gary had accused me of stealing. I didn't cash it. I endorsed it over to the Driver Safety Fund. Reflections on Corporate Loyalty. I read a lot of stories on here about young people job hopping, quiet quitting, acting your wage. And you know what? I used to judge that. I used to be the guy saying, you gotta put in your time. You gotta be loyal. I was wrong. The younger generation has it right. Loyalty is a two-way street. If the company isn't loyal to you, you owe them nothing. Not your time, not your stress, and certainly not your future. I gave 20 years to a company that would have let me burn to keep the owner's son warm. I missed my daughter's plays. I missed dinners. For what? For a promise that was never going to be kept. If you are in a job where the goalposts keep moving, stop playing the game. If your boss promises you a promotion next quarter, for more than 2 quarters in a row leave. Don't wait for the secret to come out. Don't wait until you find the embezzlement or the fraud. Just go. Because the only thing you can't get back is time. I'm happy now. I work hard, but I go home at 5 o'clock. I play golf, badly, on weekends. I enjoy my wife's lasagna. And every now and then, when I drive past the hardware store, I see the carts lined up perfectly in the lot. And I think, at least Gary finally learned how to do an honest day's work. Update, the final loose end. I thought the story was over. I really did. But life has a funny way of circling back. 2 days ago, I got a LinkedIn notification. A message request. It was from Monica Vane, the mistress, the consultant. I debated ignoring it. But curiosity is a curse. I opened it. Subject, apology. Bill. I know you probably hate me. You should. I was part of it. I wanted to tell you that I didn't know the money was coming from the safety budget. Gary told me it was surplus profit. He told me he owned the company. I was stupid and greedy. I testified against him to reduce my sentence, probation and restitution. I'm working as a waitress now. I lost my real estate license. I just wanted you to know that the GPS units weren't my idea. I told him it was too obvious. He said, Bill is a steer. He pulls the cart, he doesn't check the wheels. He underestimated you. We both did. Good luck. M. Bill is a steer. That line stuck with me. A castrated bull, bred for labor and meat. That's what he thought of me. That's what he thinks of all of us who keep our heads down and do the work. I printed that email. I framed it. I hung it in my office at Miller & Sons, right next to the picture of my daughter. Whenever I have to make a decision about an employee, about a raise, a promotion, or a day off, I look at that email. I look at that line. And I make sure I never, ever treat a human being like livestock. Because steers eventually get slaughtered. But bulls? Bulls fight back. End of story. That's it. That's the whole saga. From the first lie to the final email. It's been a long road, and writing it all down has been cheaper than therapy. To everyone reading this who feels stuck, who feels underappreciated, who is holding onto a promise that feels like it's rotting on the vine. Wake up. Look at the actions, not the words. And if you find an invoice for a consultant you've never met, run. The whiskey in my glass was neat, top shelf, and completely ignored. I was staring at a wrist that did not belong to me. It was a thick wrist, tan from what I assumed was leisure rather than labor, attached to a man who looked like he had not yet seen his 30th birthday. He was wearing a fitted white t-shirt that cost more than my first car, and he was laughing. That was not the problem. The problem was the gold Patek Philippe Calatrava on his wrist. It was a vintage model, 1975. It had a distinctive scratch on the left lug where my father had scraped it against a brick wall while building the patio of our first family home. I knew that scratch better than I knew the lines on my own palm. I had given that watch to my wife, Sarah, 3 months ago. The clasp had been loose. She told me she was taking it to the jeweler in the city, the one her family had used for decades, to get it repaired and then placed in our safety deposit box. She said it was too valuable to keep in the house. She was right. It was valuable. But apparently, its value was currently being used to impress a 20-something kid in a dimly lit wine bar 40 miles from where my wife was supposed to be. Sarah was sitting next to him. She was not in Chicago. She was not at the Regional Sales Strategy Conference. She was right here, in a booth at a place called the Velvet Vine, wearing the red dress I bought her for our 25th anniversary. She was leaning in, her hand resting casually on this kid's forearm, listening to him speak as if he were reciting the secrets of the universe. I watched her throw her head back and laugh. It was a laugh I recognized, but one I had not heard directed at me in years. It was light, flirtatious, and completely unburdened by the mortgage payments, the tuition fees, and the decades of shared grind that defined our life. I sat in the shadows of the bar, near the kitchen entrance. The lighting was poor, which was to my advantage. I had come here to meet an old contractor friend, Mike, to discuss the renovations on the lake house we were planning to buy for retirement. Mike had called to cancel 10 minutes ago, citing a burst pipe at his daughter's place. I had decided to stay and finish my drink. Providence, it seemed, had a cruel sense of humor. My initial reaction was not rage. It was a cold, paralyzing clarity. It was the feeling of standing on a frozen lake and hearing the ice crack beneath your boots. You do not run immediately. You freeze. You assess. You calculate the distance to the shore. I looked at the kid again. He was handsome in a generic, soft way. He had the kind of face that had never taken a punch and a jawline that suggested he spent more time in front of a mirror than looking at a spreadsheet. He gestured with his hand, the hand wearing my father's watch, and the gold caught the flicker of the candlelight. That watch represented 3 generations of men who woke up at 5 in the morning. It represented grit. It represented integrity. Seeing it on this boy was a desecration. I pulled out my phone. I opened the text thread with Sarah. "How is the conference?" I typed. I watched her across the room. Her phone lit up on the table. She glanced at it, her face tightening for a fraction of a second, the mask of a carefree woman slipping just enough to reveal the calculating liar underneath. She flipped the phone over, screen down, and turned her attention back to the boy. I waited. 1 minute. 2 minutes. Then my phone buzzed. Exhausting, the reply read. Just finished the last seminar. Heading to the hotel room now to order room service and crash. Miss you. I looked at the timestamp. I looked at her. She was currently signaling the waiter for another round of drinks. I did not storm over there. I did not flip the table or punch the kid in his perfect teeth. That is what a younger man would do. That is what a man with nothing to lose would do. I had everything to lose. I had a paid-off house, a substantial 401k, a reputation in the community, and a daughter in her final year of law school. I was not going to blow up my life in a bar on a Tuesday night. I was going to dismantle her life, brick by brick, with the same methodical patience I had used to build my business. I signaled the bartender, paid my tab in cash, and slipped out the back exit. I sat in my truck in the parking lot, the engine cold, watching the entrance. I needed to know who he was. I needed to know where they went. 40 minutes later, they walked out. They were stumbling slightly, arm in arm. I saw him unlock a silver BMW convertible. It was a flashy car, the kind that screams lease payments you can barely afford. Sarah got in the passenger seat. He got in the driver's side. I waited for them to pull out, then I followed. I kept 2 cars between us. They didn't go to a hotel. They didn't go to an apartment complex. They drove 10 miles north to a subdivision of new builds, the kind of sterile, overpriced condos that were popping up everywhere. He pulled into the driveway of a unit on the end. I parked down the street, killed the lights, and watched. They went inside. The lights came on downstairs, then upstairs. I sat there for an hour. I memorized the address. I memorized the license plate. Then I drove home to an empty house that suddenly felt like a museum of a dead civilization. The house was quiet. It smelled of the lemon polish Sarah used on the floors and the faint, lingering scent of the pot roast she had made 2 days ago before leaving for her trip. I walked through the living room, touching the furniture. The leather armchair where I read the paper. The mantel where photos of our daughter Emily stood in silver frames. We looked happy in those photos. We looked solid. We looked like the kind of couple that other people envied. I went into my study and unlocked the bottom drawer of my desk. I pulled out the file marked Financials. Sarah handled the day-to-day bills. She was an accountant, after all. It made sense. I handled the investments and the long-term savings. We had a system. Or I thought we did. I logged into our joint checking account. I rarely looked at the granular details, only the top-line numbers to ensure we were on track. Tonight, I looked at the details. There were withdrawals. Cash withdrawals. $500 here. $800 there. They were sporadic enough to miss if you weren't looking, but frequent enough to add up. I went back 6 months. Then a year. The pattern emerged slowly, like a photo developing in a darkroom. The withdrawals coincided with her business trips. Then I saw the transfers. Venmo, PayPal, Zelle. Small amounts at first, then larger. $2,000 to Limitless Consulting, LLC. $3,000 to Prestige Auto Leasing. I looked up Limitless Consulting, LLC on the State Business Registry. The registered agent was a man named Tyler Vance. The address matched the condo I had just watched my wife enter. Tyler. The kid had a name. And apparently, he had a consulting firm that did nothing but consult my bank account. I did not sleep that night. I sat in the study, drinking coffee and building a timeline. The mandatory business trips had started 18 months ago. Sarah had been promoted to a regional oversight position. It required travel, she said. FaceTime with clients. It meant missing weekends. It meant missing my birthday last year. I had been understanding. I had been proud of her. I thought she was building our nest egg. I realized now that she was building an escape hatch. The next morning, I went to work. I own a small logistics company. Trucks, warehouses, supply chains. It is not glamorous work, but it is real. It requires attention to detail. If you miss a detail in my line of work, things don't get delivered, and you lose contracts. I applied that same scrutiny to Tyler Vance. I called a private investigator I had used for employee background checks. His name was Russo. He was expensive, discreet, and effective. I need everything on a Tyler Vance, I said. I gave him the address and the license plate number. And I need to know his relationship with Limitless Consulting. Corporate espionage? Russo asked. Something like that, I said. By noon, Russo had a preliminary file. Tyler Vance was 28 years old. He was a life coach and entrepreneur. His social media was a shrine to hustle culture. Photos of him standing in front of rented jets, quotes about grinding while others sleep, and videos of him giving vague advice about manifesting destiny. He had no previous employment history that lasted longer than 6 months. He had a mountain of student debt that had mysteriously started shrinking rapidly in the last year. And the BMW? It was leased in the name of Limitless Consulting, LLC. The money trail was simple. Sarah was funneling money into this shell company, and Tyler was using it to play the role of a successful businessman. She was funding his lifestyle. She was paying for the car he drove her around in. She was paying for the dinners where she laughed at his jokes. She was paying for the privilege of being used. That hurt more than the sex. I could almost understand a physical affair. We were older. Maybe she was bored. Maybe she needed to feel desirable. But this was financial predation. This kid was a parasite, and she had attached him to our lifeblood. And he had my father's watch. Sarah came home on Thursday evening. I was in the kitchen making a sandwich when she walked in. She looked tired. She was dragging her suitcase, the wheels clacking on the hardwood. "I am so glad to be home," she said, dropping her bag and sighing. She came over to hug me. I stiffened just slightly, but I let her wrap her arms around me. I smelled the hotel soap, but underneath it, I smelled the cloying sweet cologne that Tyler Vance wore. "How was Chicago?" I asked. My voice was steady. I was proud of that. "Brutal," she said, pulling away and going to the fridge. "Meetings from 7 to 7. The client is a nightmare. I barely saw the outside of the conference room." "Did you get the deep dish pizza?" I asked. It was our running joke. Whenever one of us went to Chicago, we had to get Lou Malnati's. "No time," she said, pouring herself a glass of wine. I ordered a salad in the room and passed out. She was lying so easily. It was effortless. It flowed out of her like water. I watched her sip the wine, the same wine we bought by the case from a vineyard we visited on our 10th anniversary. "I missed you," she said, smiling at me over the rim of the glass. "I missed you too," I said. It was quiet here. "Did you get the gutters cleaned?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "And I fixed the latch on the back gate." "You're amazing," she said. I looked at her. She was 52, but she looked good. She took care of herself. I had always thought we were aging together, two trees with roots tangled deep in the same soil. Now I saw that she was pruning herself away from me, reaching for sunlight somewhere else. "Oh," I said, as if I had just remembered. I was looking for the safety deposit box key. I wanted to put the deed to the lake property in there once we close. She froze. The glass stopped halfway to her mouth. "The key?" "Yeah. It's usually in the top drawer. I couldn't find it." I think I have it," she said. "I took it with me. I was worried about leaving it in the house while I was gone." "Why would you take the safety deposit key to Chicago?" I asked. "Just paranoia," she said with a nervous laugh. "You know how I get." "Right," I said. "Well, we should go to the bank tomorrow. I want to check on Dad's watch. I was thinking of wearing it for Emily's graduation dinner next week." Her face went pale. It was subtle, but I saw it. The blood drained from her cheeks. "The watch," she stammered. I thought you said it was too loose." "It was," I said. "But you took it to the jeweler, right? It should be fixed by now. It's been 3 months." "Right," she said. "Yes. Of course. But I haven't picked it up yet." "You haven't?" I asked. "I thought you said it was in the box." I meant I was going to put it in the box after I picked it up," she said. She was scrambling. Her eyes were darting around the room. "The jeweler is so slow. You know how old Mr. Henderson is." "I can call him," I said. "Speed him up." "No," she said too loudly. She cleared her throat. "No, don't bother him. He gets cranky. I'll handle it. I'll go next week." "Okay," I said. I turned back to my sandwich. "Just want to make sure it's safe." "It's safe," she said. "I promise." I let her think she had won that round. I let her retreat to the shower to wash off the guilt. I sat at the table and ate my sandwich. It tasted like sawdust. The investigation continued for 2 weeks. Russo gave me everything. He gave me photos of them at dinners. Photos of them at the park. He gave me the financial breakdown of Limitless Consulting. It was a Ponzi scheme of one. Sarah was the only client. I also found out about the investments. Sarah had liquidated a mutual fund we had set up for travel. $40,000. Gone. She had transferred it to Tyler for a crypto opportunity. I felt physically ill when I saw that. That money was for Europe. We were going to do a river cruise on the Danube. We had talked about it for 10 years. Now it was sitting in some digital wallet, or more likely, on Tyler's wrist and in his driveway. I had to act. But I couldn't just divorce her. In our state, Everything was community property. If I filed now, she would get half of what was left. She could take half my business. She could take the house. And knowing her current state of mind, she would funnel all of it to Tyler. I needed to stop the bleeding. I needed to protect the assets. I called my lawyer, David. We had gone to high school together. I need a post-nuptial agreement, I said. A post-nup? David asked. Frank, you guys have been married forever. Is everything okay? No, I said. It's not. But I need to secure the business. I need to secure the inheritance for Emily. If I don't, it's all going to disappear. I explained the situation. David was silent for a long time. That's a mess, Frank, he said finally. I know, I said. Can we do it? We can, David said. But you have to get her to sign it. Why would she sign away her rights to the business? Because she thinks I'm about to take a massive risk, I said. And she's risk-averse. Especially when she has her own secret fund to protect. I formulated a plan. It was a gamble, but I knew Sarah. I knew her fear of poverty. I knew she liked the stability I provided, even if she resented the boredom. That Friday, I came home early. I looked distraught. I sat at the kitchen table with my head in my hands. Frank. Sarah asked. What's wrong? It's the business, I said. We're in trouble, Sarah. Big trouble. She sat down opposite me. What do you mean? I made a mistake, I said. I leveraged too much on the new fleet. And now the EPA is coming down with new regulations. I'm looking at fines. Massive fines. And lawsuits. Lawsuits, she whispered. Personal liability, I lied. They can come after everything. The house. The savings. Your accounts. Her eyes widened. My accounts. Everything is joint, Sarah, I said. If they sue me, they sue us. We could lose it all. We could be destitute by Christmas. I watched the wheels turn. She wasn't thinking about us. She was thinking about Tyler. She was thinking about the cash flow stopping. She was thinking about her BMW payments. Is there anything we can do? She asked. David has an idea, I said. But it's drastic. We have to separate the assets. We have to do a post-nuptial agreement stating that the business, and all its liabilities, are solely mine. And we have to transfer the house and the retirement accounts into a trust that is protected, but the business debt can't touch. Okay, she said. That sounds smart. But, I added, to make it look legitimate to the courts, we have to split everything now. I take the business and the risk. You take the house and the safe investments. But we have to sign that we have no claim on each other's assets moving forward. If the ship goes down, I go down alone. You stay safe. She looked at me. I saw the relief. She thought she was getting the lifeboat. She thought she was securing the house and the retirement money, protecting it from my failure. I'll do it, she said. For the family. I'll sign whatever David draws up. You're a good woman, Sarah, I said. Thank you for standing by me. It took 3 days to draft the papers. The terms were clear. I kept the business, which was actually thriving. I kept the lake property purchase rights. She kept the house, which had a small mortgage left, and her personal accounts. We split the 401k. Crucially, the agreement stated that any debts incurred by either party were sole responsibilities, and any assets acquired after the signing were separate property. It also included a clause about financial disclosure, where we attested that we had disclosed all assets. She didn't declare the money she had siphoned to Tyler. That was fraud. If this ever went to court, the agreement would hold, and her hiding assets would destroy her credibility. We signed the papers on a Tuesday. She signed them quickly, almost eager to distance herself from my imaginary ruin. Once the ink was dry, I initiated phase 2. I needed the watch back. I couldn't just ask for it. She would say it was lost, or stolen, or still at the shop. I had to get it from Tyler. I knew where he lived. I knew his schedule. He went to a high-end gym every morning at 10 a.m. I took the day off. I drove to his condo complex. I waited until the silver BMW pulled out. I gave him 5 minutes, then I walked up to the door. I didn't break in. I'm not a criminal. I rang the doorbell. No answer. I walked around the back. It was a ground floor unit. The patio door was locked, but it was a cheap lock. I didn't touch it. Instead, I sat on the patio furniture and waited. I wasn't going to steal it. I was going to confront him. Tyler came home at noon. He walked through the front door, humming to himself. He was wearing workout gear. He didn't see me on the patio immediately. He went to the fridge, grabbed a protein shake, and walked into the living room. I tapped on the glass sliding door. He jumped a foot in the air. He dropped the shake. It exploded on the beige carpet. He looked at me, terrified. He didn't know who I was. He just saw a large, broad-shouldered man in a flannel shirt sitting on his patio. He opened the door a crack. "Can I help you?" "Open the door, Tyler," I said. "Who are you?" "I'm the investor," I said. "For Limitless Consulting." His face changed. Confusion replaced fear. "Investor? Sarah sent you." "Open the door." He slid it open. I walked in. The place was a mess. Expensive electronics, cheap furniture. It smelled of stale protein powder and deceit. "I'm Frank," I said. "Frank." He looked blank. Then it hit him. Frank. Sarah's husband. That's right. He took a step back. "Look, man, I don't want any trouble," Sarah said. "I don't care what Sarah said," I interrupted. I looked at his wrist. It was bare. He was wearing an Apple Watch. "Where is it?" I asked. "Where is what?" "The Patek Philippe. The gold watch. 1975 Calatrava." He swallowed hard. He rubbed his wrist. I don't have it." "Don't lie to me, son," I said. My voice was low. "I have pictures of you wearing it. I have bank records of every dime my wife sent you. I have the lease agreement on the BMW. I have enough to bury you in litigation for the next 20 years. You won't be able to buy a pack of gum without a lawyer present." He started to sweat. "She gave it to me. It was a gift. She said it was an investment for the business image." "It wasn't hers to give," I said. "It's stolen property. Now you can give it to me, and I walk away. Or I can call the police and report a grand larceny. The value of that watch makes it a felony. You'll go to prison, Tyler. Real prison. Not the gym." He looked at me. He looked at the phone in his hand. He was calculating the odds. He realized correctly that Sarah could not save him from this. "It's upstairs," he said. "In the nightstand. Go get it." He ran upstairs. I stood in the living room of the house my money was paying for. It was pathetic. He came down holding the watch. He held it out like it was radioactive. I took it. I inspected it. The scratch was there. It was unharmed. I put it on my wrist. The leather was warm from his hand, which disgusted me, but the weight of the gold felt like order returning to the universe. "You stay away from her?" he asked, trying to sound tough. I laughed. It was a dry, harsh sound. "No, Tyler. You keep her. You deserve each other. But the money tap is turned off. I suggest you update your resume. The consulting gig is over." I walked out. I didn't look back. I drove to the bank. I put the watch in my personal safety deposit box, the one Sarah didn't know about. Then I went to the jeweler. I bought a fake. A high-quality replica. It cost me $300. It looked exactly like the Patek, unless you opened the case back. I scuffed the lug with a file to match the scratch. I went home. I put the fake watch in the shared safety deposit box, the one Sarah had the key to. I was setting the stage for the final act. That weekend was Emily's graduation dinner. We were hosting it at a nice steakhouse. My parents were gone, but Sarah's parents would be there. Our friends. Emily's fiancé. I dressed in my best suit. I went to the bank box and retrieved the fake watch. I put it on. Sarah was nervous in the car. "You got the watch?" she asked. "Picked it up today," I said. "Henderson did a great job. Look." I held up my wrist. She stared at it. She looked like she was seeing a ghost. She knew she had given that watch to Tyler. She knew Tyler still had it, or so she thought. She clearly hadn't spoken to him since I visited him, which meant he was ghosting her. Smart kid. It looks great, she choked out. It feels right, I said. The dinner was lovely. Emily was glowing. I gave a toast. I talked about legacy. I talked about how we build things to pass them on. I want to give something to my future son-in-law, I said, turning to Mark, Emily's fiancé. Mark, you're a good man. You work hard. You treat my daughter with respect. I took off the watch. Sarah gasped. It was audible. The whole table looked at her. Frank, she hissed. What are you doing? That's your father's watch. I know, I said. And Dad would want it to go to the man who is taking care of his granddaughter. I handed the watch to Mark. He was stunned. Frank, I can't accept this. This is a Patek. Take it, I said. It's yours. Mark put it on. He was beaming. Sarah looked like she was going to vomit. She was gripping the tablecloth, so hard her knuckles were white. She thought I had just given away a $20,000 heirloom that was actually sitting in her boyfriend's nightstand. She thought reality was breaking. She couldn't say anything. She couldn't scream, "That's a fake," because I gave the real one to my lover. She had to sit there and smile. The drive home was silent. When we got inside, she exploded. How could you give that away? She screamed. That was your father's. I thought it was a nice gesture, I said calmly. You didn't even ask me. It was my property, Sarah. Remember the post-nup? Separate assets. She stormed upstairs. I slept in the guest room. The next morning, I heard her on the phone. She was in the garage, whispering. I picked up the landline in the office and listened. Tyler, pick up. You have to give me the watch back. Frank gave it away. No, I don't know how he has it, maybe he bought another one. Wait, what do you mean you gave it to him? Silence. You gave it to him? When? Yesterday? Why didn't you call me? He came to your house. She started hyperventilating. He knows? He knows everything? Tyler, don't hang up on me. Tyler. Click. She walked into the kitchen. She looked like a wreck. Her hair was messy, her eyes red. I was drinking coffee, reading the paper. Sit down, Sarah, I said. She stood there, trembling. You know. I know, I said. I've known since the night at the Velvet Vine. I know about Limitless Consulting. I know about the crypto scam. I know about the BMW. She collapsed into the chair. She started sobbing. Frank, I'm so sorry. It was a mistake. I was lost. I felt old. He made me feel seen. He made you feel seen while he was picking your pocket, I said. He didn't love you, Sarah. He loved the Visa card. I can fix it, she said. We can fix this. I'll end it. I already did. It's already over, Sarah, I said. The marriage ended the moment you put my father's watch on that boy's wrist. Please, she begged. Don't divorce me. I can't start over. I have nothing. You have the house, I said. And your half of the retirement. That's what you signed for. But the business, the growth, is mine, I said. You signed that away to protect yourself from my liabilities. Turns out, the only liability was you. That's fraud, she screamed. You tricked me. I protected my life's work, I said. And I think you'll find that if you try to challenge that agreement, the evidence of your financial infidelity, the tens of thousands of dollars you stole from our marital assets to fund a gigolo, will not look good to a judge. In fact, I could sue you for the misappropriation of funds. But I won't. If you leave quietly. She stared at me. She realized the trap had snapped shut weeks ago. She was still standing in it, waiting for the hunter to come collect. I want you out of the house by Monday, I said. You can keep the condo payment book. I'm sure Tyler will need a roommate now that his sugar mama is cut off. Frank, please, she whispered. The watch Mark has is a fake, by the way, I said. The real one is safe. Unlike our marriage. I stood up and walked out of the kitchen. The divorce took 6 months. It was relatively clean, mostly because Rousseau's file on her was so thick her lawyer told her to take the deal and run. She kept the house, but she had to refinance it to pay the bills, and interest rates were high. She had to go back to work full-time, real work, not consulting. Tyler vanished. The BMW was repossessed 3 months later. I heard he moved to Florida to try his luck with the retirees down there. I sold the logistics company 2 years later for a sum that would have made Sarah faint. I bought the lake house. I bought a boat. I spend my days fishing and fixing up the dock. I gave the real Patek Philippe to Mark on his wedding day. I told him the truth about it then. We had a beer, and he looked at the watch with a new respect. Heavy, he said. Yeah, I said. It is. Don't ever let anyone else wear it. I won't, Frank. I live alone now. It's quiet. Sometimes, I miss the idea of Sarah. I miss the woman I thought I was married to for 25 years. But then I remember the laugh in the bar. I remember the scratch on the watch on a stranger's wrist. Loneliness is the price of integrity. And honestly, it's a price I can afford. The mornings at the lake are beautiful. The water is glass. The coffee is hot. And when I check the time on my sturdy waterproof Timex, I know exactly where I stand. I stand on my own ground, paid for with my own sweat, owing nothing to anyone. Sarah called me once, about a year after the divorce was final. She was crying. She said the roof was leaking and she didn't know who to call. Call a contractor, I said. I don't know any good ones, she said. You always handled that. Figure it out, Sarah, I said. Mandatory life skill. I hung up. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel anger. I just felt done. I walked down to the dock. I cast my line into the water. The sun was setting, painting the sky in purples and golds. It was a good life. It was a real life. And for the first time in a long time, the time was all mine. Part 2, The Ripple Effect. I thought the story ended there. I thought I had tied off the tourniquet, severed the limb, and survived. But life, specifically the wreckage of a 25-year marriage, has a way of washing up debris long after the storm has passed. It started with Emily. My daughter is a sharp girl. You don't get through law school by being oblivious. During the divorce, she had been diplomatic. She loved her mother, and I never asked her to choose sides. I never told her the sordid details about Tyler or the watch. I just told her we had grown apart and that there were financial disagreements. She accepted it, though I saw the confusion in her eyes. We were the pillars of her world, and we had crumbled. 3 months after I moved to the lake, Emily drove up for the weekend. She was stressed about the bar exam, and she needed quiet. We were sitting on the porch, watching the fireflies. Dad, she said, swirling her iced tea. Mom is selling the house. I didn't look up from my whittling. Is she? Yeah. She says she can't afford the upkeep. The roof leak was bad. Mold in the attic. That's a shame, I said. It's a good house. She's moving into an apartment, Emily continued. A 2-bedroom near the mall. Sounds practical. Emily put her glass down. Why are you so cold about it? You guys built that life together. You loved her. I did, I said. Then why did you leave her with the house knowing she couldn't afford it? Why did you lock up the business? Mom says you tricked her. She says you hid assets. I stopped whittling. I looked at my daughter. She was looking at me with accusation. Sarah had been talking. Of course she had. She was rewriting history to make herself the victim. Your mother signed an agreement, I said. Because you told her you were going bankrupt. Emily snapped. She told me, Dad. You scared her into signing a postnup. That's manipulation. It's borderline illegal. It was necessary, I said. Why? Because you're greedy. I took a deep breath. I had wanted to protect Emily from the truth. I didn't want her to see her mother as a fool or a betrayer. But I also couldn't let my own child think I was a monster. Emily, I said, do you remember my father's watch? The Patek? The one you gave Mark? Yes. Do you know where it was before I gave it to Mark? In the safety deposit box. No, I said. It was on the wrist of a 28-year-old life coach named Tyler who was driving a BMW your mother paid for. Emily went silent. The crickets seemed to get louder. "What?" she whispered. "Your mother didn't go to Chicago for business," I said. "She didn't go to half those conferences. She was funding a boyfriend. She drained $40,000 from our travel fund. She was funneling money from the joint account into his shell company. I didn't trick her into the post-nup to hoard money, Emily. I did it to stop her from giving your inheritance to a gigolo." Emily stared at me. Mom wouldn't." I stood up and went inside. I went to my safe. I pulled out the folder Russo had given me. The photos. The bank statements. The lease agreement. I brought it out and placed it on the table in front of her. "I didn't want you to see this," I said. "But I won't let you look at me like I'm the villain in this story." Emily opened the folder. She looked at the picture of Sarah and Tyler at the bar. She looked at the bank transfers. Her face crumbled. She read for 20 minutes. When she closed the folder, she looked 10 years older. "She told me she was lonely," Emily said, her voice shaking. "She told me you were emotionally distant." "Maybe I was," I admitted. "I was working. I was tired. I'm not perfect, Em. But I never betrayed the team. I never stole from us." Emily didn't speak to her mother for a month. That wasn't my intention, but it was the consequence. The truth is a corrosive acid. It cleans the surface but eats away everything that isn't solid. The second ripple came from the business. When I sold the logistics company, I sold it to a conglomerate. They kept most of the staff, including my old operations manager, Dave. Dave and I met for lunch one day when I was in town signing papers. "You know who came by the office looking for a job?" Dave asked, biting into a burger. "Who?" "Some kid named Tyler Vance." I nearly choked on my coffee. "You're kidding." "Nope. Came in acting like he owned the place. Said he had extensive management experience at a consulting firm. Limitless Consulting." I laughed. I laughed until my ribs hurt. "What did you tell him?" "Well," Dave said, wiping his mouth. "I ran his background check. Saw the repo on his car. Saw the eviction notice on his condo record. And I remembered the name from that time you had Russo looking into folks. I put 2 and 2 together. And I told him we were looking for a swamper. Someone to wash the trucks. Minimum wage. Night shift." "Did he take it?" "Walked out in a huff. Said he was executive material." "Executive material," I shook my head. "That kid is going to be grinding until he's my age, and he'll never have what I have." "He doesn't have the grit, Frank," Dave said. "None of them do." It was a small victory, but it tasted sweet. The final ripple was the most difficult. It was Christmas, 2 years post-divorce. I was at the lake house alone. Emily and Mark were spending the holiday with Mark's family in Boston. I didn't mind. I had a fire going, a stack of books, and a bottle of scotch. The phone rang. It was the landline. Only a few people had the number. "Frank." It was Sarah. Her voice sounded thin. "Merry Christmas, Sarah," I said. I kept it neutral. "Merry Christmas," she said. There was a pause. I'm at the apartment. It's snowing." "It's snowing here too." "I miss the house," she said. "I miss the big tree we used to put up in the foyer." "That was a nice tree," I acknowledged. "Frank, I messed up." She started crying. Not the hysterical crying of the confrontation, but a deep, mournful weeping. "I messed up everything. I'm so lonely. The kids. Emily is polite, but she's cold. She looks at me like she pities me. She knows the truth, Sarah." "I know," she sobbed. "I know she knows. I lost her respect. I lost you. And for what? For a few months of feeling young? Tyler didn't even remember my birthday the year we were together." "I know," I said. Can I come up?" she asked. "Just for coffee? Just to see the lake? I won't stay. I just need to see something familiar." I looked at the fire. I looked at the empty chair across from me. It would be easy to say yes. It would be easy to let her in for an hour, to share the burden of the memories. We had 25 years. You don't just erase that. But then I looked at my wrist. The Timex was ticking away. If I let her in, I opened the door to the chaos again. I opened the door to the doubt. Sarah was charming. She was manipulative. She would start with coffee, then it would be remember when, and then she would be asking for a loan, or asking for forgiveness I wasn't ready to give. Forgiveness is for the soul. Boundaries are for the sanity. No, Sarah, I said. Frank, please. No. You made your choice. You chose the condo and the BMW and the life coach. You walked out of the marriage long before I kicked you out. You can't come back just because the other life didn't work out. I have no one, she whispered. You have yourself, I said. Start there. Build something real. Stop looking for someone else to carry you. You're so hard, she said. I had to be, I said. To survive you. I hung up. I sat there for a long time. The fire popped and hissed. I felt a twinge of guilt, the old instinct to protect her kicking in. But I crushed it. I poured another finger of scotch. I wasn't hard. I was solid. There is a difference. I survived the betrayal. I survived the dismantling of my family. I protected my legacy. The next summer, Mark and Emily came up to the lake. Mark was wearing the Patek. We were working on the boat engine. Run smooth, Mark said, wiping grease from his hands. Just needed a new spark plug, I said. Simple fix. Frank, Mark said, looking at the water. Emily is pregnant. I dropped the wrench. It clattered onto the dock. Pregnant. Yeah. Due in January. It's a boy. I felt tears prick my eyes. A grandson. A new generation. We're going to name him Frank, Mark said. If that's okay. I couldn't speak. I just nodded. I pulled Mark into a hug. My legacy wasn't the money. It wasn't the lake house. It wasn't even the watch. It was this. It was raising a daughter who found a good man. It was passing on the values of hard work and loyalty. It was ensuring that the name lived on, attached to people who understood what it meant. Sarah would be a grandmother. She would have a role. I wouldn't deny her that. But she would be a visitor in that boy's life, just as she was a visitor in mine now. I looked out at the lake. The water was calm. The storm was truly over. I picked up the wrench. All right, I said, my voice thick. Let's get this engine started. We've got places to go. We took the boat out. The engine hummed. The wind hit my face. I looked at the wake behind us, the churning white water spreading out and fading into the blue. That's all the past is. Just a wake. It shows you where you've been, but it doesn't drive the boat. I pushed the throttle forward. We picked up speed. I was heading toward the horizon, and for the first time in years, I wasn't looking back. I was free. Part 3, The Ghost in the Machine. 3 years went by. Life at the lake developed a rhythm. The seasons changed. The grandson, little Frankie, learned to walk, then run. I taught him how to skip stones off the dock. Mark and Emily came up often. It was peaceful. Then, I got the letter. It was from the IRS. An audit notification. My stomach dropped. I had always been meticulous with my taxes. Every deduction documented, every receipt filed. I didn't play games with the government. I called my accountant, a new guy named Steve since I'd moved up north. Frank, it looks like a discrepancy in the filing from 4 years ago, Steve said. The year of the divorce. That was settled, I said. We filed separately after the post-nup. Right, Steve said. But the IRS is flagging a massive unreported income stream attached to your social security number from a joint entity that wasn't properly dissolved. What entity? Something called Vance Strategies. It was listed as a subsidiary of your old logistics firm for tax purposes. My blood ran cold. Vance Strategies. Tyler Vance. I drove down to the city the next day. I went to the records office. I pulled the incorporation papers for this Vance Strategies. There it was. My signature. Or rather, a very good forgery of my signature. And Sarah's signature, real as day. She had listed me as a guarantor. She hadn't just given him money. She had tried to legitimize his business by attaching it to my credit rating and my company's tax ID. She had forged my name to open a line of credit, which they had maxed out and never paid. The debt had been sold, written off, and now the IRS considered the forgiven debt as taxable income. I owed $40,000 in back taxes on money I never saw, for a business I didn't own, run by a man who was sleeping with my wife. The rage I felt then was different from the bar. At the bar, it was shock. Now, it was a cold, quiet fury. She had lied during the post-nup. She had committed fraud. She had put me in the crosshairs of the federal government. I called David, my lawyer. "Frank, if she forged your signature, that's a felony," David said. "And since she did it to secure credit, it's bank fraud. And since it affects taxes, it's tax fraud. If we report this, she goes to jail. Not figurative jail. Real jail." I sat in my truck, looking at the river. I thought about little Frankie. I thought about Emily. Did I want to be the man who sent his ex-wife, the grandmother of his grandson, to prison? What are my options? I asked. "You can pay the tax bill," David said. "Clean it up. Swallow the loss. Or you file a police report, prove the fraud, and the IRS goes after her. And the district attorney probably picks it up." I hung up. I drove to Sarah's apartment. It was a garden-level unit in a complex that had seen better days. Her car, a used Honda Civic, was in the spot. I knocked on the door. She opened it. She looked older. Her hair was gray now, she had stopped coloring it. She was wearing a cardigan I recognized from 10 years ago. "Frank." She looked terrified. I held up the IRS letter. "Vance Strategies," I said. She turned white. She grabbed the door frame to steady herself. I thought they closed that," she whispered. "You forged my signature, Sarah. You opened a credit line in my name for him. He said he needed it for startup capital. He said he'd pay it back in a month. He said it was just a formality." "And you believed him?" "I wanted to help him succeed. I thought if he made it big, he wouldn't need my money anymore. We could be equals." "You are a fool," I said. "A criminal fool." Are you going to the police?" She was shaking. I looked at her. She was pathetic. She was living paycheck to paycheck, working as a bookkeeper for a landscaping company. She had lost her looks, her status, her home. I said. "David says you do 3 to 5 years." She started to sob. "Please, Frank. I can't go to jail. I'm a grandmother. Please." "You didn't think about that when you signed my name," I said. I looked around the apartment. It was small, cluttered with knickknacks from our old house. It was a shrine to a life she had torched. "I'm not going to the police," I said. She collapsed to her knees. "Thank you. Oh God, thank you." "But," I said, "I am not paying this either." "You are." "I don't have $40,000. "I know," I said. "But you have a 401k. The one you got in the divorce. That's my retirement. That's all I have." "Then you better cash it out," I said. "You're going to write me a check for the full amount, plus the penalties. And I will pay the IRS. And we will sign an affidavit stating this was your error, without admitting the fraud so you stay out of cuffs. But you are paying every cent. Frank, that will wipe me out. I'll have nothing." "You have your freedom," I said. "That's more than you deserve." She cried for an hour. But she did it. She called the bank. She initiated the withdrawal. The penalties for early withdrawal hit her hard. It took almost everything she had left. When she handed me the cashier's check a week later, her hands were trembling. "How am I supposed to live?" she asked. "Like everyone else," I said. "Work hard. Spend less than you make. Don't date con artists." I took the check. I paid the IRS. The audit was closed. I never told Emily about the fraud. I didn't want to poison the well further. Sarah was punished enough by poverty and regret. I went back to the lake. That winter was harsh. Heavy snows. I spent a lot of time shoveling. It gave me time to think. I realized that anger is a fuel, but it burns dirty. It leaves soot on your soul. I had run on anger for 4 years. It was time to switch fuel sources. I started volunteering at the local vocational school, teaching kids about logistics, supply chains, how to run a business. There was one kid, Leo. Shop kid. Tough background. Reminded me of myself at that age. He didn't have a dad. He didn't have a watch. I mentored him. I helped him get an apprenticeship. When he graduated, I didn't give him a Patek Philippe. I gave him a sturdy tool set. Build something, I told him. I will, Mr. Frank, he said. And he did. Years later, I was sitting on the dock. Frankie was 10 now, fishing beside me. Grandpa. Yeah, bud. Why does Grandma look so sad all the time? I looked at the bobber floating in the water. Because she forgot what was important, Frankie. She traded the things that matter for things that shine. Like fool's gold. Exactly like fool's gold. I won't do that, Frankie said. I know you won't, I said. I patted his shoulder. The sun went down. The stars came out. The universe wheeled overhead, vast and indifferent. But down here, on the dock, everything was in its place. The accounts were balanced. The debts were paid. The watch was on the right wrist. And I was finally truly at peace. It's funny. When I saw that watch on Tyler's wrist that night, I thought my life was over. I thought the world had ended. But looking back, it wasn't the end. It was an excavation. It cleared away the rot. It dug down to the bedrock. And on the bedrock I built a life that, unlike that BMW, unlike that marriage, unlike that consulting firm, was actually built to last. I took a sip of my coffee. It was cold, but I drank it anyway. No regrets. Not one. I gave up my career to support my pregnant girlfriend. The baby wasn't mine, but the house was in my name. I looked at the document on the kitchen island. It was a single sheet of paper, standard letter size, with a logo in the top left corner that would ruin my life in the short term and save it in the long term. 0% probability. That is a hard number to argue with. Next to it sat a much thicker stack of papers. The deed to my home. The one asset I had left after 3 years of systematic dismantling of my finances, my career, and my dignity. Sarah was upstairs in the nursery I had built with my own hands, nursing a child that belonged to another man, in a house she believed she owned half of. She was wrong. I sat there drinking black coffee, listening to the floorboards creak overhead, and waited for the timer on the microwave to beep. That was my signal. I wasn't waiting for oatmeal. I was waiting for the exact moment her mother, Brenda, would walk through the front door with her key to help out for the day. I needed an audience for this. I wanted witnesses. My name is Mark. I am 52 years old. Until 2 years ago, I was the regional operations manager for a mid-sized logistics firm in the Midwest. I didn't work in a glass tower. I worked in a portable office on job sites and warehouses. I wore steel-toed boots and polo shirts. I made good money, 6 figures for the last decade, and I saved most of it. I am not a gambler. I don't buy fancy cars. My one indulgence was my house. I bought a fixer-upper on 3 acres 20 years ago. I gutted it. I rewired it. I plumbed it. Every nail in the framing of the addition was driven by me. I paid off the mortgage 7 years ago. The title is clean. It is in my name. Sole ownership. That detail is the only reason I am writing this story from my living room and not a rented efficiency apartment. I met Sarah 3 years ago. She was 34. She was a receptionist at a supplier I dealt with. She was polite, well-dressed, and seemed to have a good head on her shoulders. We started talking during my supply runs. Coffee turned into dinner. Dinner turned into weekends. I was cautious. I had been divorced in my 30s and lost a fair chunk of change, so I wasn't eager to rush into anything. But Sarah was different. She didn't care about my money, or so it seemed. She drove a 10-year-old sedan and lived in a small, tidy apartment. She talked about family, about traditional values, about how hard it was to find a man who actually knew how to fix things. She played me like a fiddle, and I enjoyed the music. 6 months in, she moved in. I made it clear, no rent, just help with utilities and groceries. I wanted to be generous. I wanted to take care of her. That is my nature. If I see a problem, I fix it. If I see a need, I fill it. Sarah filled a need for me, too. The house was big and empty. Having her there, cooking dinner occasionally, laughing at the TV, it made the place feel like a home again. Then came the pregnancy. We weren't trying. In fact, we were supposedly careful. But she sat me down at the kitchen table one Tuesday evening, tears in her eyes, and showed me the stick. 2 lines. I felt a rush of panic followed by a surge of primitive pride. I was 50. I thought that ship had sailed. A baby. A legacy. Someone to leave the house to. The trouble started almost immediately. Sarah's doctor, a specialist she insisted on seeing 2 towns over, declared the pregnancy high risk. I never met the doctor. I was always working when she had appointments, or so the schedule worked out. She would come home with pamphlets and serious expressions. She needed bed rest. She needed to avoid stress. She couldn't stand for long periods. She quit her job. That was fine. I could support us. But then she started talking about my job. "Mark," she said one night, rubbing her barely there bump. "You're gone 12 hours a day. What if something happens? What if I fall? What if I go into labor early? I have no one here." Her mother, Brenda, lived an hour away, but Sarah insisted Brenda had bad knees and couldn't be a full-time carer. It had to be me. "I can't just quit, Sarah," I told her. "I have a pension to think about. I have a team relying on me." "Is the team more important than your son?" she asked. She knew it was a boy. She felt it, she said. The pressure mounted for weeks. Every time I came home late, she was crying. Every time I went on a business trip, she had a scare that required me to race home, only to find her calm on the sofa saying the cramping had stopped. I was exhausted. I was making mistakes at work. Finally, I made the decision. I had significant savings. I could take a sabbatical or early retirement and do some consulting later. I wanted to be there. I wanted to be the father I never got to be. I resigned. I cashed out a significant portion of my 401k to create a liquid family fund, since my income stream was stopping. That was the beginning of the end. The moment I was home full-time, the dynamic shifted. I wasn't a partner anymore. I was a servant. Sarah took bed rest to the extreme. She spent her days in the master bedroom, watching reality TV and scrolling on her phone. I cooked 3 meals a day. I brought them to her on a tray. I did the laundry. I scrubbed the toilets. I managed the landscaping. And I started the nursery renovation. She wanted the guest room gutted. New drywall. Expensive non-toxic paint. Custom furniture. "The baby needs the best, Mark," she said, looking at samples of cribs that cost more than my first car. "You can afford it. You have that retirement money sitting there." I bought the crib. I bought the changing table with the imported wood. I was burning cash at a rate of $5,000 a month, easy. Between the baby gear, her medical bills, which were oddly always cash pay because of some insurance mix-up she claimed to be handling, and the groceries, the account was draining. Enter Brenda. About 4 months into the pregnancy, Sarah's mother decided her knees were better. She started coming over 3 or 4 days a week. She didn't come to help me clean. She came to sit in the bedroom with Sarah and critique my housekeeping. "Mark, the dust on the ceiling fan is atrocious," Brenda would say, walking into the kitchen where I was peeling potatoes. "It's bad for the baby's lungs." "I'll get to it, Brenda," I'd say. "I'm making dinner." "Well, hurry up. Sarah is starving. She needs protein." They whispered. That was the thing that started to gnaw at me. I would walk up the stairs to bring fresh water or a snack, and the giggling and whispering would stop instantly. They would look at me with these blank, innocent faces. "What were you talking about?" I asked once. "Just girl stuff, Mark." "Don't worry about it," Sarah said, dismissing me with a wave of her hand. I felt isolated in my own home. I was the financier and the janitor. I wasn't the husband or the father. The renovations escalated. Sarah decided the master bath wasn't suitable for bathing an infant. We needed a soaking tub. We needed heated floors. "Sarah, the baby won't be using the master bath," I argued. "He has his own bathroom down the hall." "But I need it, Mark. My back is killing me. If I'm stressed, the baby is stressed. Do you want to hurt the baby?" That was her trump card. Do you want to hurt the baby? I spent $30,000 renovating the bathroom. I did the labor myself to save money, kneeling on tile for 12 hours a day while she instructed me from the doorway. That tile is crooked, she'd point. It's not crooked, the wall is out of square. I'm floating it, I'd snap back. Don't yell at me, she'd wail. My blood pressure. I would apologize. I would fix the tile. I was a man possessed by the idea of keeping this family together. The turning point came in the 7th month. I was in the garage, looking for a specific drill bit. I needed to move a box of old paperwork to get to my tool chest. The box tipped over, spilling old tax returns and receipts. As I was gathering them up, I saw a receipt that didn't belong to me. It was from a restaurant in the city, a steakhouse. Dated 2 weeks prior. The timestamp was 8:30 p.m. 2 weeks prior, Sarah had told me she was going to a prenatal yoga class with Brenda and staying at her mother's house overnight to be closer to the doctor for an early morning scan. I stared at the receipt. It was for 2 porterhouse steaks and a bottle of wine. Pregnant women don't drink bottles of wine. And Brenda is a vegan. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. I went inside. Sarah was napping. I checked her phone. It was locked. I had never checked her phone before. I respected privacy. But I knew the passcode, or I thought I did. It used to be her birth year. Incorrect passcode. I tried the baby's due date. Incorrect passcode. I put the phone down. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I am a methodical man. In logistics, you don't scream at the truck driver when the shipment is late. You check the GPS logs first. You gather data. I started watching. I noticed she was protective of her purse. She took it to the bathroom with her. I noticed when Brenda came over, she would sometimes park her car down the street. Why? To leave the driveway clear? Or so I wouldn't see who else was in the car. One afternoon, I told Sarah I was going to the hardware store for supplies. I'd be gone for 2 hours. I drove down the road, parked my truck in a neighbor's wooded lot, Dave, a good friend who knew something was up, and walked back through the woods to the rear of my property. I sat on a stump with a view of the back patio. 40 minutes later, a car pulled up. It wasn't Brenda. It was a red sports car. A man got out. He was younger than me, maybe mid-30s. Fit. Trendy haircut. He walked to the back door like he owned the place. Sarah opened it. She wasn't waddling. She wasn't in pain. She threw her arms around him and kissed him. A real kiss. They went inside. I sat on that stump for an hour. I watched them in the kitchen through the sliding glass door. They were laughing. He was touching her stomach. My stomach churned. I wanted to storm in there. I wanted to break him. I wanted to scream. But I didn't. Because of the house. If I kicked her out now, pregnant, without proof, she would claim abuse. She would claim stress. She would drag me through family court. In my state, judges tend to side with the pregnant mother, regardless of the circumstances. She could get an emergency order to stay in the house. She could force me out. I needed to be smarter. I waited until he left. I walked back to my truck, drove to the hardware store, bought a box of nails I didn't need, and came home. Did you get what you needed? Sarah asked. She was on the sofa, looking flushed and happy. Yeah, I said. I got exactly what I needed. The next 2 months were an exercise in torture. I played the part. I rubbed her feet. I built the crib. I listened to Brenda complain about my cooking. But inside, I was making moves. I went to a lawyer. A shark named Goldman. I told him everything. You need a paternity test, Goldman said. But you can't get a court-ordered one until the child is born. And if you sign the birth certificate, you are legally the father until you prove otherwise, which is harder to undo. So I don't sign. If you don't sign, she knows you know, Goldman said. She'll dig in. She'll claim common law. Does she contribute to the mortgage? No. House is paid off. Utilities. Sometimes. Cash. Good. Keep it that way. Don't let her pay for a single structural repair. Do not let her name go on any bill related to the property. I followed his instructions. I documented everything. Every meal I cooked. Every dollar I spent on her medical bills. The birth came. It was a chaotic Tuesday. Her water broke, for real this time. I drove her to the hospital. I held her hand. I breathed with her. It was the hardest acting job of my life. The baby was born. A boy. He didn't look like me. I know, newborns look like potatoes, but he had dark curly hair. I have stick-straight blonde hair, thinning now. Sarah has light brown hair. The man in the red sports car had dark, curly hair. I held the boy. I felt a pang of sadness. He was innocent in this. He was just a baby. But he wasn't my baby. The nurse brought the birth certificate paperwork. I need to check some info with my insurance before I sign anything, I told Sarah. Admin stuff. I'll handle it later. She was too exhausted to argue. She assumed I was taking care of it, like I took care of everything else. I never signed it. The space for father remained blank. We came home. The nesting period was hell. Sarah was demanding. The baby cried. Brenda moved in temporarily to help. 3 days after we got home, I swabbed the baby's cheek while Sarah was in the shower. I had ordered the kit online and had it shipped to Dave's house. I mailed it off the same day. I waited. The email came 5 days later. Probability of paternity, 0%. And that brings us to this morning. The microwave beeped. I heard a car door slam. Brenda. She walked in without knocking, using the key I had foolishly given her. She was carrying a bag of groceries. Mark, why is the driveway blocked? She complained. You need to move your truck. I didn't move. I took a sip of coffee. Mark. Sarah came down the stairs, holding the baby. Mom? Is that you? Mark is being useless this morning. He hasn't even started breakfast. They both came into the kitchen. I stood up. Sit down, I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it was hard. It was the voice I used when a crane operator was swinging a 2-ton beam over my crew without clearance. Sarah stopped. Excuse me. Sit down. Both of you. They sensed the shift. The atmosphere in the room went from domestic irritation to heavy tension. They sat at the island. I slid the paper across the granite countertop. The DNA test. Sarah picked it up. She read it. Her face went pale, then red. What is this? She hissed. You went behind my back. Who is he? I asked. This is illegal. You can't do this. Brenda shouted, snatching the paper. It's not illegal to swab a cheek in my own house, I said. Who is he, Sarah? The guy in the red sports car. She froze. You were spying on me? I was living in my house. You were cheating in it. It doesn't matter. Sarah screamed, slamming her hand on the counter. The baby started to cry. You stepped up. You acted like the father. You renovated the nursery. You're the father in every way that counts. No, I said. I'm the bank in every way that counts. And the bank is closed. You can't do this to us, she cried, tears instantly flowing. We're a family. Everyone makes mistakes. Mark, I was scared. I needed security. He wasn't ready. You were. I was the safe bet, I corrected. I was the retirement plan. I live here, she yelled. This is my home. You can't just kick me out with a newborn. Actually, I said, picking up the stack of papers, the deed and the eviction notice. I can. I spoke to the sheriff this morning. I spoke to my lawyer. You are a guest. A guest who has overstayed her welcome. This is a formal notice to quit. You have 30 days. But honestly, considering the fraud, I'd suggest you leave today. Fraud. Brenda spat. Financial fraud, I said. I have receipts. The medical bills I gave you cash for? I called the billing department. They were covered by state aid. You pocketed the money. That's theft. Sarah went white. I didn't. I have the withdrawal slips, Sarah. And I have the statement from the hospital showing a zero balance. That's $10,000. Do you want me to call the police for theft, or do you want to pack your bags? This was the leverage. I didn't want the police. I wanted them gone. You're a monster, Sarah sobbed. Throwing your own son onto the street. He's not my son, I said. Call the guy in the red car. Let him step up. He's married, she shrieked. The silence that followed was deafening. Well, I said. That sounds like a problem for you, him, and his wife. Not me. I pointed to the door. Get your things. You can take the baby clothes. You can take the crib, I paid for it, but I don't want it. You leave the furniture. You leave the appliances. You leave my dignity. We're not going anywhere. Brenda crossed her arms. Then I call the cops regarding the $10,000, I said, picking up my phone. And I'll sue you, Brenda, for conspiracy to commit fraud, since I know you drove her to the bank to deposit that cash. It was a bluff. Mostly. But they didn't know that. Brenda stood up. Come on, Sarah. We don't have to stay where we aren't wanted. But the house. Sarah whimpered. He promised. I promised to support my child and my faithful partner, I said. Neither of those people exist. The next 3 hours were a flurry of trash bags and screaming. I sat on the porch and watched. I didn't help them carry a single box. I didn't hold the door. I watched them shove their clothes into Brenda's SUV. Sarah tried one last time at the door. She looked soft, vulnerable. The woman I fell in love with. Mark, she whispered. We can fix this. Please. I love you. I looked at her. I really looked at her. I saw the manipulation. I saw the selfishness. You don't love me, Sarah. You love the roof over your head. Goodbye. I closed the door. I locked the deadbolt. I walked into the kitchen. It was silent. The baby was gone. The noise was gone. I walked upstairs to the nursery. It was stripped of clothes, but the mural I painted on the wall was still there. A forest scene. It looked lonely. I went to the master bedroom. The expensive sheets were gone. The bed was bare. I sat down on the edge of the mattress. I was 52. I had no job. My savings were decimated. I was alone. But I looked around the room. I looked at the crown molding I installed. I looked at the solid oak floors I refinished. I took the deed out of my pocket. My name. Only my name. I didn't have a family. I didn't have a career. But I had my house. And for the first time in 3 years, I could breathe. The recovery wasn't easy. I had to go back to work. I couldn't get my old managerial role back. They had filled it. I had to take a step down, working as a site supervisor for a different company. The pay is less. The hours are longer. I'm the old guy on the site now, answering to 20-somethings who have never swung a hammer. It humbles you. I sold the baby furniture on Marketplace. I painted over the nursery mural. It's a home office now. Sarah tried to contact me a few times. Legal threats mostly. She wanted palimony. She wanted compensation for the work she did on the house. My lawyer sent a single letter outlining the fraud evidence and the paternity results, and the messages stopped. I heard through the grapevine small towns talk that the guy in the red car didn't leave his wife. Sarah is living in Brenda's basement. They are miserable. I'm rebuilding my savings, slowly. It will take me 5 years to get back to where I was. I might not retire until I'm 70. But every evening, when I pull into my driveway, I look at the new roof I just paid for. I walk into my kitchen, and it's clean. I cook a steak for myself. I drink a beer. I gave up a lot. I was a fool for love. I ignored red flags that were big enough to wrap around a billboard. But I learned a valuable lesson. You can rebuild a bank account. You can get another job. You can even heal a broken heart. But you never ever put a name on a deed unless you are 100% sure. Tonight, I'm going to sand down the deck. It needs some work. And I have all the time in the world. Update 1. It has been 6 months since I posted my story. I didn't expect it to blow up like it did. I read every comment. Some of you called me a hero, some called me cold-hearted for kicking out a baby. To the latter, I say this: you don't know the feeling of holding a child you thought was yours, realizing you were just a wallet with a pulse. Things have been quiet, until last week. I was at work, I'm supervising a commercial build now, getting back into the rhythm of things, when I got served papers. Not from Sarah. From the state. Sarah applied for state welfare benefits. When you apply for benefits, the state goes looking for the father to recoup costs. She listed me as the father. Despite the paternity test. Despite everything. She put my name on the government forms. I had to take a day off work, unpaid, to go down to the family court administration with my lawyer. I presented the DNA test results from the accredited lab. The clerk looked at the results, looked at Sarah's application, and sighed. This happens more than you think, she said. They removed me from the file. But here is the kicker, because she lied on a government application, she triggered a fraud investigation. I didn't even have to press charges. The bureaucracy is a slow-moving beast, but when it bites hard. I also found out she tried to sue the biological father for support. Apparently, his wife found out. The wife comes from money. Real money. They lawyered up with a firm that makes my lawyer look like a kitten. They are burying Sarah in legal motions. She is fighting a two-front war, and she has no ammunition. Meanwhile, I've made changes to the house. I turned the nursery, my office, into a proper man cave. Leather chair, bookshelf, vintage audio equipment. It's my sanctuary. I met a woman last month. Her name is Linda. She's 48. She's a nurse. She has her own house. She has grown kids. On our second date, she insisted on paying for her own dinner. I work hard for my money, Mark, she said. I don't need yours. I almost proposed right there. We're taking it slow. Very slow. She hasn't been to my house yet. I haven't been to hers. We meet in neutral territory. We talk about life, about retirement plans, about gardening. It's boring. It's undramatic. It's wonderful. I'm still working on the debt. I'm driving my truck until the wheels fall off. I bring a ham sandwich to work every day. No more fancy dinners. No more renovations for a while. But the house is quiet. The air is clear. One piece of advice for the young guys reading this: love is great. But trust is earned. And assets? Assets are protected. Update 2, the final nail. I thought I was done with this. I really did. But life has a way of dragging you back in for one last punch. Yesterday, I came home to find a car in my driveway. Not Brenda's SUV. Not the red sports car. It was a beat-up Honda Civic. Sarah was sitting on my front steps. She looked terrible. She's lost weight. Her hair was messy. She was holding the baby. I stayed in my truck for a minute. Part of me, the old part, the caretaker part, wanted to rush out and ask if she was okay. But then I remembered the bank account. I remembered the lie. I got out of the truck but stayed by the door. You're trespassing, I said. She stood up. The baby was sleeping. Mark, please, she said. Her voice was raspy. Mom kicked us out. I didn't say anything. The fraud investigation. They cut her benefits because she was hiding income. She blames me. She put my stuff on the curb. I have nowhere to go. You have the father, I said. He got a restraining order, she said. He claims I'm stalking him. His wife. She's destroying me, Mark. And you want what? To stay here. Just for a few days. Until I can get into a shelter. Please. For the baby. He's innocent. This was the test. The final test. The baby is innocent. That is the tragedy of it. But if I let her in, even for a night, she establishes residency again. If I let her in, the cycle starts again. No, I said. Mark. No. I will give you the number for the women's shelter in the next county. They have beds. I checked. I hadn't checked, but I knew they existed. I can't believe you, she spat. The sadness vanished, replaced by that familiar venom. After everything we had. We had nothing, I said. I had a delusion. You had a target. I walked past her to the front door. I unlocked it. If you aren't off my property in 5 minutes, I'm calling the sheriff. And this time, with the fraud investigation pending, they won't be lenient. I went inside. I watched on the security camera I installed last month. She stood there for 2 minutes. She cried. Then she screamed something at the house that I couldn't hear through the double-paned insulated glass. She got in the Civic and drove away. I sat in my hallway for a long time. It felt cold. Doing the right thing doesn't always feel good. Sometimes it feels like swallowing gravel. But it was necessary. I called Linda later. I told her what happened. "You did the right thing," Linda said. "You can't save people who are trying to drown you." She's right. I'm done saving people. I'm saving myself. My 401k is up 4% this quarter. The deck sanding is finished. The house is increasing in value. I am still standing. The house always wins. And I am the house. I signed the papers yesterday morning. The house is gone. The keys are in a lockbox I will never touch again. The proceeds are already in a trust account that my brother cannot access. Not that there is much left after the liens were paid. My phone has been ringing for 16 hours straight. It is my brother, David. It is my Aunt Linda. It is my mother, calling from the facility on a borrowed phone, confused and weeping. I have not answered a single call. I am sitting in my truck in the parking lot of a diner, drinking black coffee, and for the first time in 40 years, I feel absolutely light. I feel weightless. They call me cold. They call me heartless. They say I stole their legacy. But I did not steal anything. I simply stopped fixing what they broke. I simply let the math finally balance itself out. It took me 4 decades to realize that you cannot save people who are determined to drown, especially when they are using your back as a raft. This is how it happened. This is why I sold my parents' home while they are still alive, and why I left my younger brother with nothing but his own choices. To understand why I did this, you have to understand the dynamic of my family. It was not subtle. It was not hidden. In our house, there were 2 distinct categories of people. There was me, the insurance policy. And there was David, the investment. I was the older one, the sturdy one, the one who didn't need attention. David was the dreamer. David was sensitive. David had potential. That word haunted my entire childhood. Potential. It was the currency my parents traded in, and the debt I was expected to service. My father was a foreman at a plant. My mother was a school secretary. We were middle class, solid, American stock. We were the people who paid our bills on Friday and mowed the lawn on Saturday. But there was a sickness in the way they looked at money and love. They viewed money as a way to smooth over the rough edges of reality for David, while reality was allowed to hit me full in the face. When I was 16, I wanted a car. My father sat me down at the kitchen table with a ledger. He showed me the household expenses. He explained the value of $1. He told me that if I wanted a vehicle, I needed to work for it. It was a good lesson. I respected it. I got a job bagging groceries. I saved every dime. I bought a beat-up sedan with rust on the wheel wells. I paid for my own insurance. My father clapped me on the shoulder and told me he was proud of my independence. 3 years later, David turned 16. He did not get a job. He played varsity baseball. He had a girlfriend. He was busy. My parents bought him a brand new truck. It wasn't a luxury vehicle, but it was new. It had 0 miles. When I asked my father about the ledger, about the value of $1, he looked at me with genuine confusion. He told me that David needed a reliable vehicle for practice. He told me that David had a bright future in sports and couldn't be distracted by a job. He told me I should be happy for my brother instead of being jealous. That was the first time I heard the word jealous used to describe a demand for fairness. It would not be the last. I went to a state university. I worked nights as a security guard to pay my tuition. I graduated with 0 debt and a degree in business management. I didn't ask them for a dime, and they didn't offer one. They were saving, they said. Retirement was coming. They had to be careful. Then David went to college. He didn't want to go to the state school. He wanted to go to a private liberal arts college 3 states away. The tuition was triple what mine had been. My parents took out a second mortgage. They co-signed loans. They dipped into the 401k. They told me it was an investment. David was going to be a lawyer. David was going to be someone important. David lasted 3 semesters. He partied. He skipped classes. He got arrested for possession of marijuana and public intoxication. My father drove through the night to bail him out. They hired a lawyer. They paid the fines. They brought him home and told everyone he was taking a semester off to find himself. The tuition money was gone. The loans were still there. My parents began to complain about money to me. They asked why I didn't visit more often. They asked why I didn't bring groceries when I came for Sunday dinner. I was 23 years old, making an entry-level salary, and they were subtly expecting me to subsidize the household because they had set a pile of cash on fire to keep David warm. I met my wife, Sarah, around that time. Sarah is a woman of immense patience, but she has eyes that cut through nonsense like a laser. The first time she met my family, she was quiet on the ride home. She waited until we were in my apartment before she spoke. She told me that my family looked at me like a utility, like a refrigerator or a furnace. They expected me to work, and they only noticed me when I stopped functioning. She was right. David floated through his 20s. He had ideas. He was going to flip houses. He was going to start a landscaping business. He was going to be a personal trainer. Every single idea required seed capital. And every single time, my parents opened the checkbook. I remember the landscaping phase clearly. David needed a truck and equipment. My father had just received a small inheritance from his own aunt. It was about $40,000. That money should have gone to pay off the second mortgage they took out for David's college. Instead, they gave it to David. He bought a truck that was too nice for work and a trailer full of high-end mowers. He mowed 3 lawns. Then he realized it was hard work. It was hot. Customers were demanding. 6 months later, the equipment was sold for pennies on the dollar to pay his rent. The truck was repossessed because he stopped making the insurance payments and got into an accident. My parents didn't get their $40,000 back. When I brought it up, my mother started crying. She said I was kicking him when he was down. She said David was depressed. She said he just needed to find his passion. I built a life. I started a small logistics company. It wasn't glamorous. It was boxes and trucks and schedules. I worked 6 days a week for 10 years. Sarah and I bought a house. We didn't buy a mansion. We bought a fixer-upper in a good school district. We did the work ourselves. I laid the tile in the bathroom. Sarah painted the siding. We had 2 kids. We started college funds for them the day they were born. We lived below our means. My parents viewed my success as a resource they could tap. They didn't ask directly at first. It was small things. Their water heater broke. They didn't have the cash. Could I handle it? I handled it. Mom needed dental work. The insurance didn't cover it. Could I help? I helped. I did it because I was a good son. I did it because I loved them. But every time I wrote a check, I saw David posting photos on Facebook of a weekend trip to Vegas or a new tattoo. The breaking point of the first act of our lives came when David got married. He met a woman named Jessica. She was just like him. She liked nice things but didn't like the work required to get them. They wanted a big wedding. My parents, who were complaining about the cost of prescription drugs, paid for it. They spent $20,000 on a wedding for a son who had never held a job for more than a year. At the reception, my father gave a toast. He talked about how proud he was of the man David had become. He talked about David's spirit. He didn't mention the money. He didn't mention that I had paid for the open bar because the venue wouldn't serve alcohol until the bill was settled. He just looked at David with adoring eyes. I sat there with Sarah, squeezing her hand under the table until my knuckles turned white. 3 years later, David and Jessica divorced. It was messy. There was a child involved, my nephew Leo. David wanted custody, not because he wanted to be a father, but because he didn't want to pay child support. My parents hired another lawyer. They drained their emergency fund. They took cash advances on credit cards. They fought for David. David lost. He got weekend visitation. He was supposed to pay support. He didn't. He moved back into my parents' basement. He was 32 years old. The years blurred. I stopped going over there as much. It was too painful to watch. My parents were aging rapidly. The stress of David's failures was eating them alive, but they refused to excise the tumor. They just kept feeding it. My father was still working at 68 because they couldn't afford to retire. He looked gray and tired. I told him to retire. I sat him down with a spreadsheet, just like he had done for me with the car. I showed him that if they sold the big house and downsized, and if they stopped giving David money, they could live comfortably on Social Security and his pension. My father got angry. He slammed his hand on the table. He told me that he couldn't sell the house. It was the family home. It was David's home. Where would David go? I asked him why that was his problem. David was a grown man. My father told me I had no loyalty. He told me I was cold. Then came the decline. It wasn't sudden. It was a slow, grinding erosion of health and competence. My mother was the first to fall. She developed type 2 diabetes, which she managed poorly. Then came the neuropathy. Then the falls. She broke her hip coming down the stairs to do David's laundry. David was in the house when it happened. He was playing video games with headphones on. He didn't hear her scream. He didn't find her for an hour. I got the call at work. I rushed to the hospital. David was there, looking pale and scared. My father was holding Mom's hand. The doctor told us she would need extensive rehab. She couldn't go up and down stairs anymore. I held a family meeting in the hospital cafeteria. I told them the reality. Mom couldn't go back to that house unless they installed a stairlift and renovated the bathroom. It would cost $15,000. Or, David could move out of the basement, and they could set up a bedroom for Mom downstairs. David immediately balked. The basement was his space. It was his apartment. He couldn't sleep on the couch. He needed his privacy. My father looked at me. He asked if I could pay for the renovation. I looked at him. I looked at David, who was drinking a soda and checking his phone. "No," I said. "I won't pay for it." My father was shocked. "This is your mother," he said. "I know," I said. "And that is your son. He is living in your house rent-free. He can move his room. Or he can pay for the renovation. I have 2 kids going to college in 3 years. I am not taking money from their future to make David comfortable." They called me selfish. My aunt called me the next day to tell me I was a disgrace. But I held the line. David eventually moved upstairs to the guest room, and Mom took the downstairs den. But he made them pay. He was surly. He was loud. He refused to help her to the bathroom. He refused to cook. My father, frail and tired, was doing everything. Then the stroke hit my father. It was massive. It stole his speech and half his mobility. He was in the ICU for 3 weeks. When he came out, he was a shell. He needed 24-hour care. This is where the story truly begins. This is where the numbers stopped adding up and the reality crashed down. My parents needed full-time care. Mom couldn't walk well. Dad couldn't do anything. They needed a facility, or they needed 24-hour in-home nursing. Medicare covers some things, but it doesn't cover long-term custodial care. That comes out of pocket until you are destitute. I took over the finances. I had to. I got power of attorney. It was a battle. David wanted it. He argued that he was the one living with them, so he should control the money. But the social worker at the hospital saw right through him. She saw a man in his late 30s wearing brand new sneakers while his father's insurance lapsed. She advised my mother to sign it to me. My mother, in a moment of rare clarity, agreed. I went to the house to get the financial records. I hadn't been in the home office in years. It was a disaster. Stacks of unopened mail. Final notices. And the ledger. The real ledger. I sat at my father's desk and went through the bank statements for the last 5 years. I felt like I was being punched in the gut, over and over again. They had refinanced the house 3 times. There was almost no equity left. The mortgage payment was double what it should have been. They had cashed out my father's life insurance policy 2 years ago. They had maxed out 4 credit cards. And where did the money go? I traced it. It wasn't medical bills. It wasn't groceries. It was transfers to David. Venmo to David. Checks written to cash endorsed by David. Car payments for a lease in David's name. Legal fees for David's DUI. Rent for an apartment David rented for 3 months and abandoned. My parents had liquidated their entire lives, over $300,000 of equity and savings, and poured it into the bottomless pit that was my brother. They were destitute. They had nothing but Social Security checks that were instantly swallowed by the mortgage they shouldn't have had. I sat there in the dust and the smell of old paper, and I cried. I didn't cry for them. I cried for the sheer stupidity of it. I cried for the waste. I drove to the hospital. I walked into the room where my mother was sitting by my father's bed. David wasn't there. He was never there. "We need to talk," I said. I laid it out. I showed them the numbers. I showed them the graph of their destruction. "You are broke," I said. "You cannot afford in-home care. You cannot afford the house. The mortgage is $3,000 a month. Your combined income is $3,200. You have $200 a month for food, heat, lights, and medicine. It is impossible." My mother looked at the papers. She didn't understand. She kept saying, "But we have the house." "You don't own the house," I said. "The bank owns the house. You own the debt." "But David." She whispered. "David took it all," I said. "David ate your retirement." She got defensive. She said he borrowed it. He was going to pay it back. He had a plan. He was working on a big project. "Mom," I said. "He is 38. There is no project. There is no money. Now, here is the reality. You and Dad need to go into assisted living. We have to sell the house to pay off the debts and try to salvage enough for your care before you have to go on Medicaid and end up in a state ward." "No," she said. "We can't sell the house. Where will David live?" There it was. The final hurdle. Even facing the end of their lives, facing destitution, her primary concern was the housing of the man who had robbed her. "David is an adult," I said. "He will find a job. He will rent a room. He will survive." "I won't do it," she said. "I won't sign the papers to sell." "You don't have to," I said. "I have power of attorney. I can do it." She looked at me with hate. Pure hate. "You would throw your brother on the street?" "He threw you into poverty," I snapped. "I am trying to make sure you and Dad have a bed to sleep in and someone to change his diapers. I am done protecting David." I left the hospital. I went straight to a real estate agent I knew. I listed the house. I priced it for a quick sale. The market was hot. I knew it would go in a week. I went back to the house. David was there, watching TV in the living room. The air conditioner was blasting. He was eating a steak. "Pack your sh***, I said. He looked up, confused. "What?" "The house is listed. It goes on the market tomorrow. You have 30 days to vacate. Legally, since you don't pay rent and have no lease, you are a guest. But I'm giving you 30 days. He laughed. He actually laughed. "You can't do that. Mom and Dad would never let you." "Mom and Dad aren't in charge anymore," I said. "I am. And the free ride is over." He stood up. He tried to intimidate me. He's bigger than me, but he's soft. "I've spent 20 years lifting crates and moving pallets. This is my house," he shouted. "I'm the one taking care of them." "You haven't visited Dad in 4 days," I said. "I checked the logs. You're eating their food and spending their money. Get out." He swung at me. It was a clumsy, lazy swing. I stepped back. "Touch me," I said, "and I call the sheriff. And unlike Dad, I won't bail you out." He stormed out. He called Mom. Mom called me, screaming. She told me to stop. She told me to take the sign down. She told me I was ruining the family. I turned my phone off. I spent the next 2 weeks in a hell of logistics. I had to find a facility that would take 2 high-needs patients with limited assets. I had to navigate the Medicaid look-back period. I had to deal with the bank. David didn't pack. He dug in. He told the neighbors I was stealing the house. He posted on Facebook that his greedy brother was evicting his sick parents. I had people I went to high school with sending me nasty messages. I didn't respond. I just kept moving forward. The house got an offer in 4 days. It was a cash offer, slightly below asking, but quick closing. I accepted. I went to the house with a dumpster. I told David he had 48 hours before the closing to get his stuff out, or it was going in the trash. He finally realized I wasn't bluffing. He started throwing things in his car. But he didn't just take his stuff. He tried to take the silver. He tried to take the TV. He tried to take Dad's tools. I stood in the driveway with a clipboard and the inventory list I had made. "That TV stays," I said. "It's a fixture included in the sale." "I bought it," he lied. "Show me the receipt," I said. "Or show me the credit card statement." "Oh wait, you don't have a credit card. Dad bought it. It stays." He screamed. He cried. He played the victim. He told me I was jealous because Mom loved him more. "She does love you more," I said calmly. "And look where it got her. Broken, broke, and homeless." He left. He drove off in his car that was 5 payments behind, flipping me off. Then came the hard part. The purge. You don't realize how much a family accumulates in 40 years until you have to dismantle it in a week. I walked through the rooms of my childhood. I saw the growth chart on the doorframe. I saw the marks where I had grown steadily, and the marks where David had shot up past me. I found boxes of David's participation trophies. Shelves of them. My varsity letters were nowhere to be found. I found a stash of letters in my father's desk. Letters from collection agencies. Letters from lawyers. Letters from the IRS. I found a letter my father had started writing to me but never sent. It was dated 3 years ago. It was shaky. "Dear son," it read. "I don't know how to fix this. I am afraid we have ruined him. We just wanted him to be happy. I am so tired." I sat on the floor of the empty living room and read that letter over and over. They knew. They knew what they were doing, but they couldn't stop. They were addicts, and David was their drug. I hired a crew to clean the rest. We sold the furniture. We donated the clothes. We threw away the trash. The house was empty. It echoed. The closing was yesterday. I signed the deed. The money was wire transferred. Here is the math. Sale price, $280,000. Mortgage payoff, $210,000. Liens and credit card judgments against the property, $35,000. Closing costs and agent fees, $18,000. Net proceeds, $17,000. My parents worked for 45 years. They owned that home for 40 years. And at the end of it, they had $17,000 to show for it. $17,000 doesn't buy a year of care. It buys about 2 months in a decent facility. After that, they go on to state aid. They go into the shared room with the linoleum floors and the overworked staff. I took the check. I deposited it into a restricted account for their incidental expenses. Toothpaste. Socks. A TV for their room. Then I drove to the facility where I had placed them. It's clean, but it's basic. It smells of antiseptic and boiled carrots. I walked into their room. Dad was in the bed, staring at the ceiling. Mom was in the wheelchair by the window. "Where is David?" she asked. That was her first question. Not did the house sell. Not how are you. "David is gone, Mom," I said. "He's staying with a friend." "Did you give him his share?" she asked. I stared at her. His share? Mom, there is no share. The debt ate it all. The check was for $17,000. That's it. That's all that is left. "You're lying," she spat. "You sold it for hundreds of thousands. You kept it." I pulled the closing statement out of my bag. I put it on her lap. I pointed to the lines. Mortgage payoff. Liens. Helic payoff. "Look at the numbers," I said. "Look at them. This is what you gave him. You gave him your house. You gave him your security. You gave him everything. And now it is gone." She looked at the paper. Her hands were shaking. She dropped it on the floor. She started to weep. Not a sad cry, but a wail of a child who has broken a toy. "Call him," she sobbed. "Tell him to come get me. I want to go home." "You don't have a home," I said. "And neither does he." I walked out. I sat in my truck. That brings us to now. My phone is ringing. It's David. I know why he's calling. He thinks the check cleared. He thinks there is a pile of cash and he wants his cut. He probably has a new idea. A new business. A sure thing. I'm not going to answer. I am going to drive home to my wife. We are going to cook dinner. We are going to call our children and ask them about their classes. We are going to sit on our back porch, the porch I built with my own hands, paid for with money I earned, on land that belongs to us. I will make sure my parents are fed. I will make sure they have clothes. I will visit them once a week to ensure they aren't being mistreated. I will do my duty as a son. But I am done being the insurance policy. The policy is cancelled. The premium was never paid. Tomorrow, I will block David's number. I will block my aunt's number. I have one more thing to do. I have to go to the bank and set up a small transfer. I'm going to take the $17,000 and set up a strict allowance for my parents' personal needs. $50 a week. Just like the allowance I got when I was 10. If they want snacks, they can buy them. If they want a magazine, they can buy it. But if David shows up at the nursing home asking for $20, they'll have to check the ledger. I suspect they'll find they can't afford him anymore. And for the first time in my life, that isn't my problem. Update, 2 weeks later. I didn't intend to write an update, but the fallout has been extensive. People asked what happened when David realized the tap was dry. He showed up at my house. It was Tuesday night. Sarah and I were watching a movie. We heard pounding on the door. Not knocking. Pounding. I turned on the porch light. It was David. He looked rough. He hadn't shaved. He was wearing the same clothes I saw him in last time. I opened the door, but I kept the storm door locked. "Open the door," he screamed. "You thief. You stole my inheritance." "Go away, David," I said. "There is no inheritance." "I know what the house was worth," he yelled. I looked it up on Zillow. It said $300,000. "You owe me half." "Mom said you owe me half." "Zillow doesn't know about the 3 mortgages, David," I said. "Zillow doesn't know about the credit card liens you caused." I taped a photocopy of the closing statement to the glass of the storm door. "Read it," I said. "Do the math." He ripped it down. He didn't read it. He crumbled it up and threw it at the door. "I'm going to sue you," he screamed. "I'm going to get a lawyer." "With what money?" I asked. "You don't have a job. You don't have a house. You don't have parents to pay the retainer." That stopped him. The reality of his position hit him. He wasn't fighting for justice. He was fighting for survival. He needed money for gas. He needed money for food. And for the first time, there was no one to call. He slumped against the railing. The rage drained out of him, replaced by the pathetic wheedling tone I had heard him use on my mother 1,000 times. "Come on, man," he said. "I'm your brother. I'm in a tight spot. Just give me $5,000. That's all I need. I have a lead on a job in Florida. I just need to get there. $5,000 and you'll never see me again." It was tempting. God, it was tempting. To pay him to disappear. It would be cheap at twice the price. But I looked at Sarah. She was standing in the hallway, arms crossed. She shook her head. "No," I said. "What?" "No money," I said. "Not $5,000. Not $5. You are an able-bodied man. Go to a temp agency. Go to a shelter. Figure it out." "You're killing me," he whispered. "No," I said. "I'm just letting you live your own life." Finally. I closed the door. I locked the deadbolt. He stood there for 10 minutes. Then he kicked a flower pot off the porch and walked to his car. I haven't seen him since. I went to see my parents yesterday. The nursing home staff told me David had visited once. He tried to get Mom to sign a check. The nurse intervened. She told him that Mom has no checkbook. Her funds are managed by the trustee, me. David screamed at the nurse and was escorted out by security. He is now banned from the facility. When I walked into the room, Mom was staring out the window. She didn't look at me. "You banned him," she said. "The facility banned him," I corrected. "Because he was abusive to the staff. Because he was trying to steal money you don't have." "He needed help," she said. "He's your brother." "He's a predator, Mom," I said. "And you were the prey." She turned to look at me. Her eyes were dull. "I don't want to see you," she said. "If you won't help him, don't come here." "Okay," I said. "I'll make sure the bills are paid. I'll make sure you have what you need. But if you don't want me here, I won't come." I stood up. "Dad?" I asked. My father turned his head. He can't speak much since the stroke, just a few words. He looked at me. He looked at Mom. He reached out his hand. I took it. His grip was weak. "Good," he wheezed. "Job." It took me a second to understand. He wasn't asking about my job. He was telling me good job. Tears pricked my eyes. It was the first time in 40 years he had validated me without a caveat. "Thanks, Dad," I said. I left the room. I drove home. I took the long way, through the back roads. I rolled the windows down. The air smelled of rain and cut grass. I am 45 years old. I have lost my parents, effectively. I have lost my brother. I have been painted as the villain in the family story. But my bank account is secure. My children's college fund is safe. My wife is happy. And when I look in the mirror, I don't see utility anymore. I see a man. The ledger is closed. The balance is zero. And I am finally free. I let my childhood friend move in after his divorce. Then I found my name on his new loan papers. The envelope looked innocent enough. It was standard white business stationery with a cellophane window, the kind you usually toss into the recycling bin without a second glance. I almost did exactly that. I was standing in my driveway, having just pulled it from the mailbox, thinking about whether I had enough charcoal for the grill later. David had promised to cook steaks tonight as a thank you for letting him stay another month. But something about the return address made me pause. It was from a credit union 2 towns over, a place I had never banked with in my 62 years of life. I tore the flap open right there on the concrete. I didn't wait to get inside. I pulled out a single tri-folded sheet of paper. My eyes scanned the header, then the bold text in the center. "Welcome to your new signature personal loan." The amount was $25,000. The primary borrower was listed as David Miller. The co-signer was me. I felt the blood drain out of my face so fast it made me dizzy. I stood there, staring at the numbers, listening to the neighbor's lawnmower drone on in the distance. 25 grand. I am a man who pays his credit card bill in full every Friday. I have zero debt. I paid off this house 7 years ago. I have been building a nest egg for decades, so I wouldn't have to greet people at a department store when I'm 70. And here, in black and white, was an anchor tied around my financial neck. I looked up at my house. My front door was open. I could hear the television. David was in there. My best friend since we were 6 years old. The man who stood next to me at my wedding. The man who carried my wife's casket with me 3 years ago. He was in my living room, watching a baseball game, drinking my iced tea, and he had just signed my financial death warrant. I walked into the house. The cool air of the air conditioning hit my sweat-dampened skin. David was sprawled on my recliner, his feet up. He looked up and grinned. "Hey, buddy. Mail's here. I'm expecting a package from Amazon." I didn't say a word. I walked over to the coffee table, moved his half-empty glass of tea, and slapped the letter down in front of him. It made a sharp, flat sound against the wood. "We need to talk," I said. My voice was calm. It terrified me how calm I sounded. 3 months earlier. To understand why this hurt so much, you have to understand who David was to me. We grew up on the same block. We rode bikes until the streetlights came on. We went to the same college. When I started my landscaping business, David was the first one to hand me a flyer. When he went into sales, I bought whatever he was selling because I knew he needed the commission. We were brothers. We were supposed to be the 2 old guys sitting on a porch rocking chairs, complaining about the youth. Then came his divorce. David's wife, Linda, finally had enough. I never asked for details because I believe what happens in a marriage stays in a marriage, but David told me anyway. He said she was unreasonable. He said she wanted to travel and spend money they didn't have. He painted a picture of a man besieged by a shrew. When the papers were signed, David was left with his car and his clothes. He called me late one Tuesday, sounding broken. He had nowhere to go. The apartment he lined up had fallen through. He needed a place to crash for a few weeks, until he got his feet under him. I didn't hesitate. I live alone now. The house is 4 bedrooms and quiet. Too quiet. Come on over, I told him. Stay as long as you need. That was my mistake. I assumed the David moving in was the same David I grew up with. I didn't realize that desperation changes people. Or maybe I just never really knew him at all. The honeymoon phase. The first month was great. It felt like college again. We watched games. We grilled out. David was helpful. He fixed a loose step on the back deck. He cleaned the gutters without me asking. He insisted on buying groceries. I'm not a freeloader, he said over a beer one night. I appreciate this, man. You saved my life. Don't worry about it, I said. That's what family does. But slowly, the dynamic shifted. The few weeks turned into 6. Then 8. He stopped buying groceries, claiming his commission checks were delayed. He stopped fixing things. He started complaining about the house. The internet was too slow. The guest mattress was too firm. Why didn't I subscribe to the premium sports package? I let it slide. He was going through a hard time. Divorce is traumatic. I told myself to be patient. I told myself I was being a grump. Then came the questions. It started innocently. We were watching the news, and a segment on retirement planning came on. You're set though, right? David asked, glancing at me. I mean, you sold the business for a good chunk. I'm okay, I said, keeping it vague. I have enough to keep the lights on. Come on, he laughed. You have this place paid off. You have the portfolio. You have excellent credit. What's your score? 800. I don't check it, I lied. I check it monthly. It was 820. Must be nice, he muttered, taking a sip of his drink. Linda ruined mine. Tanked it. I can't even get a car loan right now. I felt a twinge of sympathy. It takes time to rebuild, I said. You just have to be disciplined. He looked at me with a strange expression. It wasn't envy exactly. It was calculation. He was looking at me like I was a resource he hadn't tapped yet. The privacy breach. I am a creature of habit. I keep my important documents in a filing cabinet in my home office. It's not locked because I live alone. I never felt the need to lock it. About 2 weeks before the letter arrived, I came home early from a fishing trip. I walked in and found David in my office. He jumped when he saw me. He was standing by the desk, and the filing cabinet drawer was slightly open. Hey, he said, his voice too loud. I was looking for. Do you have a stapler? I need to mail a rebate form. Top drawer of the desk, I said, eyeing the filing cabinet. He grabbed the stapler, used it, and practically ran out of the room. I checked the cabinet. Nothing seemed missing. My tax returns were there. My deed was there. I told myself I was being paranoid. David wouldn't steal from me. He was my best friend. I was wrong. He didn't steal the papers. He didn't need to. He just needed the information on them. Social security number. Date of birth. Income history. Everything you need to fill out a loan application online. The confrontation. Back in the living room, David stared at the letter on the coffee table. He didn't reach for it. He didn't look surprised. He took a slow breath and set his feet on the floor. Okay, he said. Okay. I can explain. Explain why my name is on a $25,000 loan, I said. I was still standing. I felt like if I sat down, I wouldn't be able to get back up. It's a bridge loan, he said, speaking fast. I have a deal. A huge deal. Real estate. But I needed liquidity to lock it in. My credit is shot, you know that. I put you down as a co-signer just to get the approval, but I was going to remove you as soon as the commission hit. You forged my signature, I said. I didn't forge it, he said, looking offended. I did it electronically. I checked the box. It's different. It is fraud, I said. You stole my identity, David. I did not. He stood up now, his face reddening. I was doing this for us. I was going to cut you in on the profit. I was trying to pay you back for everything you've done. I wanted to surprise you with a check for 10 grand. I thought you'd be happy. I looked at him. Really looked at him. I saw the delusion in his eyes. He truly believed he was the hero of this story. He believed that violating my trust was justified because his intentions were good. You have to pay it back, I said. Right now. You have to call the bank and cancel it. He let out a short, bitter laugh. I can't. The money is already gone. My knees almost buckled. Gone? It's been 3 days. I told you, I had to lock in the deal. I wired it to the developer this morning. I felt sick. Who is the developer? A guy I know. Online. It's a crypto real estate venture. I closed my eyes. There was no real estate. There was no developer. My $25,000 was currently sitting in some scammer's wallet in a country I couldn't pronounce. David hadn't just stolen from me. He had thrown the money into a furnace. Pack your bags, I said. David blinked. What? Get out. Pack your stuff. You are leaving. Now. You can't do that, he said. His voice dropped an octave. It wasn't pleading anymore. It was threatening. I have rights. I've been here for 3 months. I have mail coming here. You can't just kick me out. I'm a tenant. The room went silent. The air conditioner hummed. I looked at the man I had shared my toys with. The man I had shared my life with. And I realized he had planned this. He knew the laws. He knew exactly what he was doing. You are going to claim tenancy? I asked quietly. I don't want to, he said, shrugging. But if you're going to be an asshole about a simple business mistake, I have to protect myself. I have nowhere to go, and by law, you have to give me 30 days notice. Formal eviction. He sat back down in the recliner and picked up the remote. I suggest we just cool off. We can figure out the payment plan later. I'm good for it. He turned the volume up on the baseball game. The escalation. I walked out of the room. I went to my bedroom and locked the door. I sat on the edge of my bed and called my daughter, Sarah. She is a paralegal. She had warned me about David. She said he gave her bad vibes at the wedding. I had told her she was being judgmental. He took out a loan in my name, I told her. And now he says he won't leave. I'm coming over, she said. No, I said. He wants a fight. He wants drama. If we give him drama, he plays the victim. I need to handle this legally. Dad, he committed a crime. Call the police. I can't, I said. I can't send him to jail. I just want him out and I want my name off that paper. You are too nice, she said. And it is going to cost you. She was right. But I had a plan. I hung up and called the credit union. I spent 2 hours on the phone. I explained the situation. I spoke to the fraud department. They told me because it was an electronic signature coming from my IP address, because he used my Wi-Fi, it would be difficult to prove it wasn't me without filing a police report against him. If you file a report, we can freeze the funds if they haven't fully cleared, or go after the recipient, the agent said. But we need a police report number. I looked at the bedroom door. I thought about David's mother, who treated me like a son before she passed. I thought about the time David pulled me out of a frozen lake when we were 12. I couldn't do it. I couldn't file the report. I decided to pay the price. I would eat the debt. It would hurt, but it wouldn't bankrupt me. But he had to go. I went back out to the living room. David was asleep in the chair. David, I said. He woke up, groggy. Yeah. I am not calling the police, I said. He smiled, a smug, sleepy smile. I knew you wouldn't. You're a good friend. But, I continued. I am shutting off the internet. I am canceling the cable. I am putting a padlock on the fridge. And I am filing for a formal eviction in the morning. You have 30 days. If you are not out by day 31, the sheriff removes you. And I will sue you in civil court for every dime. His smile vanished. You're going to starve me out? I'm not feeding a man who stole from me, I said. And I'm changing the Wi-Fi password right now. The siege. The next 3 weeks were hell. David didn't leave. He dug in. He bought a mini fridge and put it in the guest room. He used his phone as a hotspot. He stopped talking to me entirely. We lived like ghosts in the same house. I would hear him walking around at night. I started sleeping with a chair wedged under my doorknob. I received letters from the court. The eviction hearing was set. Then, things got worse. I came home one day to find a tow truck in my driveway. A man was hooking up my boat. My fishing boat. The one I bought for my retirement. "Hey!" I yelled, running up the driveway. "Put that down. What are you doing?" The driver looked at a clipboard. "Repossession order. You're 3 months behind." "I don't have a loan on this boat." I shouted. "I paid cash." The driver handed me a paper. It was a title loan. Taken out 2 months ago. In my name. Signed electronically. I felt the world tilt. David hadn't just taken the 25 grand. He had found the title to the boat in the filing cabinet. He had taken a high-interest title loan against it. He had been intercepting the mail for months, so I wouldn't see the notices. I looked at the house. David was watching from the window. He saw me looking. He let the curtain fall back into place. That was the moment the friendship died. Not when he took the money. Not when he refused to leave. But when he watched a stranger take my boat and hid behind a curtain. "Take it," I told the driver. "Just get it out of here." I walked into the house. I didn't go to my room. I went to the guest room door. I didn't knock. I kicked it open. David jumped up from the bed. He was eating a sandwich. "The boat?" I asked. My voice was shaking. "I needed cash to pay the interest on the other loan," he yelled. "I was trying to fix it. It's a spiral, man. You don't understand how pressure works." "You put a lien on my property," I said. "You leveraged my life." "I'm a victim here too," he screamed. "The economy. Linda. The system. Everyone is against me. You were supposed to help me." "I did help you." I roared. "I gave you a home. I fed you. And you ate me alive." I grabbed his suitcase from the closet and threw it on the bed. "Pack," I said. "I have 10 more days," he sneered. "The law says." "I don't care about the law anymore," I said. I moved closer to him. "I am not a violent man. But I have worked with my hands my whole life. David has worked in sales. I have 50 pounds on him and a lifetime of lifting stone. I am going to stand here. And you are going to pack. And you are going to leave. If you don't, I am going to start throwing your things onto the lawn. And if you try to stop me, we will see who is still standing when the cops finally do come." He looked at me. He looked at my hands, balled into fists at my sides. He saw something he had never seen before. He saw that the well was dry. There was no more patience. There was no more good old days. He started packing. The aftermath. He was gone in an hour. He shoved his clothes into garbage bags. He took his TV. He tried to take the lamp from the bedside table, but I glared at him until he put it back. He walked out the front door without looking back. He got into his car, which I realized was probably paid for with my money, and drove away. I sat on the front porch steps and watched him go. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel relieved. I felt hollow. The next day, I went to a lawyer. We ran a full credit audit. It was worse than I thought. He had opened 3 credit cards. Maxed them out. Cash advances. The personal loan for $25,000. The title loan on the boat. He had even tried to open a line of credit at a jewelry store, but was denied. Total damage, $68,000. My lawyer, a sharp woman named Karen, laid it out for me. "You have 2 choices," she said. "Choice A, you file a police report for identity theft and fraud. We send that to the creditors. We can likely get most of this discharged, but David will go to prison. Felony fraud. Elder abuse, potentially, depending on how the DA spins it. Choice B," she continued. "You pay it. You sue him in civil court, win a judgment, and hope he wins the lottery someday so you can collect. Because right now, you can't get blood from a stone." I sat in her office, looking at the skyline. I thought about prison. I thought about David in a cage. I thought about the stickball games. I can't put him in jail, I said softly. Karen took off her glasses. Sir, with all due respect, he didn't just borrow money. He systematically dismantled your financial security. He is a predator. I know, I said. But I made a promise to his mother on her deathbed that I'd look out for him. She didn't mean this, Karen said. I know, I repeated. But I have to live with myself. The resolution. I chose option B. Sort of. I liquidated a portion of my portfolio. It hurt. It set my retirement plans back about 5 years. I paid off the boat to get it back. I paid off the credit cards. I negotiated a settlement on the personal loan. I wrote a check for the price of my friendship. But I didn't let him get away completely scot-free. I sued him. I got a judgment against him for the full amount plus legal fees. I garnished his wages. He works at a car dealership now in the next county. Every 2 weeks, I get a check for about $200. It will take him 300 years to pay me back. I don't care about the money anymore. The checks are just a reminder to him that I am still here. That he didn't break me. I changed my locks. I installed a security system. I bought a safe that is bolted to the floor. I froze my credit with all 3 bureaus. I haven't spoken to David since that day. The final twist. About a month ago, I ran into his ex-wife Linda at the grocery store. I hadn't seen her in years. We stopped to talk in the produce aisle. I heard about what happened, she said, looking down at her cart. I'm so sorry, Mark. He did the same thing to me. Is that why you divorced him? I asked. She nodded. He took out a second mortgage on the house without telling me. He forged my name. He lost it all on some investment scheme. We almost lost the house before I kicked him out. I stood there, stunned. He told me you wanted to travel. He said you spent all the money. She laughed, a sad, tired sound. Mark, I haven't been on a vacation in 10 years. I was working double shifts to pay the mortgage while he played big shot. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small box. I found this in his things when I was clearing out the garage, she said. I think it belongs to you. I opened the box. Inside was my grandfather's pocket watch. The one I kept on the mantel. The one I thought I had just misplaced during the chaos of him moving out. He stole it. I whispered. He tried to pawn it, she said. The shop owner knew it was real gold and asked for ID. David got scared and ran. I held the cold metal of the watch. Tears stung my eyes. Not for the watch, but for the realization that it wasn't desperation. It wasn't a mistake. It was who he was. I went home. I put the watch in the safe. I still sit on my porch in the evenings. The house is quiet again. My daughter visits on Sundays. I am rebuilding my savings, brick by brick. I learned a hard lesson. You can know someone for 50 years and not know them at all. Time doesn't equal trust. And sometimes, the people who want to drown will pull you under just to keep their heads above water for one more second. I kept the spare key to my house. It hangs on a hook in the kitchen. But nobody uses it anymore. And nobody ever will again. Update. I wasn't going to add this, but I think it's important. Yesterday, I received a letter from David. No return address. Just a handwritten note on lined paper. It said, I'm about to close a big deal. I'll have your money soon. Don't think I forgot. I'm going to make it right. You'll see. I didn't feel hope. I didn't feel anger. I walked to the shredder, fed the paper into the teeth, and watched my best friend's promises turn into confetti. Then I went outside and lit the grill. I had a steak to cook. And I was going to enjoy it alone. My wife said we were just roommates, so I stopped paying her bills and discovered her secret life. I looked at the Excel spreadsheet that detailed 30 years of my life, and then I looked at the woman eating the steak I bought, wearing the diamond earrings I paid for, sitting in the house I built. It was a Tuesday. Tuesdays were supposed to be date nights. That was the agreement we made when the kids moved out 5 years ago. We were supposed to rekindle the fire. Instead, Linda cut into her ribeye and told me that she did not see the point in pretending anymore. She told me the spark was dead. She said that at our age, passion was a myth and that we should just be comfortable. Then she dropped the hammer. She said we were just roommates now. She said it casually, like she was commenting on the price of milk. She took another bite of steak and waited for me to agree. She expected me to nod, finish my wine, and go turn on the television like a good little provider. I did not nod. I felt a cold snap in my chest that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. I looked at this woman who had not worked a full-time job since 1998. I looked at the manicure that cost $60. I thought about the mortgage payment that came out of my salary every month. Roommates. The word bounced around my skull. Roommates pay rent. Roommates split utilities. Roommates do not expect the other roommate to fund their retirement accounts or pay for their car insurance. If Linda wanted to be roommates, I was going to be the best roommate she ever had. I was going to follow the rules of a roommate agreement to the letter. I put my fork down. I did not finish the steak. I smiled at her, a tight, grim smile, and I told her that she was absolutely right. I told her that being roommates sounded like a practical arrangement. The next morning, I woke up an hour early. I did not make the coffee for her. Usually, I ground the beans and had the pot ready before she came downstairs at 9. Roommates do not act as personal baristas. I made a single cup for myself, drank it black, and went into my home office. I closed the door and locked it. This was the first time in 20 years I had locked that door. I pulled out every financial record we had. Bank statements, credit card bills, utility invoices, insurance policies. I laid them out on the oak desk. The picture was grim, but it was clear. I made $110,000 a year as a project manager for a construction firm. Linda made about $25,000 working part-time at a boutique gift shop in town. She called it her fun money. For decades, my paycheck went into the joint account. Her paycheck went into the joint account. Or so I thought. I looked at the deposits. My deposits were regular, heavy, and consistent. Her deposits were sporadic. Sometimes $500, sometimes nothing. Yet, the bills were always paid. I paid them. I paid the mortgage, the 2 car payments, the health insurance, the groceries, the internet, the water, the electricity, and the landscaping. I paid for her biannual trips to visit her sister in Florida. I paid for the clothes. I paid for the dinners. I opened a new spreadsheet. I listed every single household expense. The total came to roughly $6,000 a month. That included the mortgage on our 4-bedroom colonial, which was arguably too big for 2 people, but Linda insisted we needed the space for when the grandkids eventually came. We had no grandkids. My son was focused on his career in Chicago, and my daughter was traveling through Europe. The house was a museum of unused rooms. I calculated a 50-50 split. If we were roommates, Linda owed me $3,000 a month. That was more than her entire monthly take-home pay. I stared at the number. It was cruel. It was impossible. But she was the one who defined the relationship. She was the one who removed the marriage from the equation. I was just following the logic. I printed the spreadsheet. I printed a standard lease agreement I found online. I filled it out. Landlord, Mark. Tenant, Linda. Rent, market value for a room in a shared house, plus half of all utilities. I was generous. I did not charge her for the master bedroom. I charged her for a single room rate, plus shared access to common areas. The total came to $1,500 a month. It was a steal compared to an apartment in our neighborhood. I waited for her in the kitchen that evening. I had removed all the food I bought from the refrigerator and placed it in a separate mini fridge in the garage. The main fridge was empty except for a jar of pickles and some coffee creamer she liked. When she walked in, expecting dinner to be in progress, she stopped. She looked at the empty counter. She looked at me. "Where is dinner?" she asked. "I already ate," I said. I stopped at a diner on the way home. "You didn't bring me anything?" "Roommates don't buy dinner for each other unless it's a special occasion," I said. "And since we are just roommates, I figured you would want to handle your own meals. It promotes independence." She rolled her eyes. She thought I was being petty. She thought this would last 24 hours. She opened the fridge and gasped. "Where is the food, Mark? Where are the eggs? Where is the milk?" "That was my food," I said calmly. I bought it. I moved it to my personal storage. You are welcome to buy your own food. There is plenty of space in the fridge now. This is ridiculous, she scoffed. You're acting like a child. I am acting like a roommate, I corrected her. I slid the lease agreement and the spreadsheet across the island counter. We need to formalize this. If we are roommates, we need to separate our finances completely. I have already opened a new bank account for my salary. I have removed my name from your credit cards. I have canceled the supplemental card you carry. Her face went pale. The scoff vanished. She picked up the papers. Her hands were shaking slightly. What is this? A breakdown of expenses, I said. The total monthly cost to run this house is $6,000. Your share is $3,000. However, since I own the home and you are technically renting space, I drafted a lease. Your rent, including utilities and internet, is $1,500 a month. Payment is due on the 1st. I need a security deposit as well, but I will waive it since we have a history. $1,500, she shrieked. I only bring home $2,000 a month. That leaves you $500 for food, gas, and your personal expenses, I said. It is tight, I admit. But that is the reality of the economy. Welcome to the roommate lifestyle. I am your wife, she screamed. No, I said firmly. You specifically said we are just roommates. You said the spark is dead. You said we should not pretend. I am honoring your request. I am stopping the pretense. A husband supports a wife because they are building a life together. Roommates split bills. Which one are we, Linda? She stared at me. She was cornered. If she admitted she wanted to be a wife, she had to admit she was wrong, and she had to put effort into the marriage. She had to treat me with respect. She had to acknowledge me as a man, not just an ATM. Her pride was a fortress. She lifted her chin. Fine, she spat. If you want to play it this way, we will play it this way. I will pay your stupid rent. But don't expect me to do your laundry. Don't expect me to clean your bathroom. I wouldn't dream of it, I said. I'll hire a maid with the money I'm saving. The first month was a war of attrition. Linda bought cheap microwave meals. She started locking her bedroom door. She spent her evenings in her room, watching Netflix on a tablet because I changed the password to the main television streaming accounts. I cooked steak and potatoes for myself. I drank good wine. I hired a cleaning service to come in once a week to clean my office, my bathroom, and the kitchen. I told them to skip her room and her bathroom. The house became divided. It was cold, but it was peaceful. I realized how much stress I had been carrying. I had been worried about saving enough for both of us to retire. Now, looking at my singular expenses, I realized I could retire in 2 years if I only had to support myself. The burden of carrying a dead weight was lifting. But then the first of the month came. Linda did not transfer the money. I waited 3 days. On the 4th day, I cornered her in the hallway. Rent is late, I said. I need more time, she said, avoiding my eyes. They cut my hours at the shop. That is not my problem, I said. You signed the agreement. If you can't pay, you have to move out. That is how renting works. You can't kick me out. My name is on the deed. I smiled. Actually, it isn't. She froze. What? We refinanced 5 years ago, remember? I said. To get a better rate. You had that credit score dip because of that store card you forgot to pay. The broker suggested we put the house in my name only to secure the prime rate. You signed the quitclaim deed. You thought it was just paperwork. It wasn't. I am the sole owner of this property. It was a technicality, and in a divorce court, she would still have a claim to equity, but in the immediate moment, the power dynamic shifted violently. She realized she had no leverage. I will get you the money, she hissed. She wrote me a check 2 days later. It cleared. I was surprised. I knew her finances. I knew she didn't have $1,500 sitting around after buying her own groceries and gas for a month. She must have dipped into savings. The second month passed. The atmosphere was toxic. She stopped speaking to me entirely. She started leaving the house for long stretches on weekends. She claimed she was working extra shifts. I didn't care, as long as the check cleared. On the first of the second month, she handed me cash. $1,500 in crisp $100 bills. That raised a flag. The boutique paid via direct deposit. They didn't pay in cash. Where did this come from? I asked. I sold some jewelry, she said defensively. Is the money good or not? The money is fine, I said. I took the cash, but the suspicion gnawed at me. Linda loved her jewelry. She would never sell it. And certainly not enough to generate that kind of cash quickly. I went back to my office and pulled up the old joint bank account records again. I looked closer at the withdrawals from the years prior. I noticed a pattern I had missed before because I trusted her. Every month, for the last 7 years, there was a withdrawal of exactly $400 cash from the grocery budget. I had always assumed groceries were just expensive. Inflation, right? But $400, flat, every single month? That wasn't groceries. That was a bill. I went further back. 10 years ago, there was a large withdrawal. $15,000. I remembered that. She told me her mother needed emergency surgery and insurance wouldn't cover it. I loved her mother. I signed off on it without looking at the paperwork. Her mother died 2 years later. I started digging through the physical file cabinets in the basement. Linda was a hoarder of paper. She never threw anything away. Old receipts, old birthday cards, old magazines. I found a box labeled recipes. It was buried under a pile of Christmas decorations. I opened it. It wasn't recipes. It was mail. Most of it was junk, but at the bottom, there was a property tax bill. It was for a residential address on the other side of the city. A rougher neighborhood, but gentrifying. The bill was addressed to LM Holdings. LM Linda Miller. Her maiden name. I felt the blood roar in my ears. I looked at the date. The most recent bill was from last year. It was paid. I looked for the deed. I didn't find the deed, but I found a renovation invoice. Kitchen remodel, 124, Oak Street. The cost was $12,000. The date was 3 months ago. 3 months ago, I had suggested we redo our master bathroom. Linda had said we couldn't afford it. She said we needed to be frugal. She had bought a house. She had been funneling money out of our joint account for a decade to buy a property, pay the taxes, and renovate it. While I worked 60-hour weeks, while I drove a truck with 200,000 miles on it to save money, she was building a real estate portfolio. But why? And for who? I did not confront her. Not yet. Information is ammunition, and I needed a full clip. The next Saturday, she said she was going to the boutique for an inventory count. She left at 8 a.m. I waited 5 minutes. I got in my truck. I didn't follow her. I knew where she was going. I drove to 124, Oak Street. It was a small bungalow. Neat. Well-maintained. Fresh paint on the siding. A new roof. It looked better than my house, which needed power washing. A Honda Civic was parked in the driveway. It wasn't Linda's car. I parked down the street and watched. An hour later, Linda's SUV pulled up. She got out. She was carrying grocery bags. Not the cheap stuff she was eating at home. I saw the green logo of the high-end organic market. She walked to the front door and used a key. She walked in like she owned the place. Because she did. I sat there for 4 hours. My legs cramped. My coffee went cold. I needed to know who was in that house. Was it a lover? Was she living a double life with another man? The thought made me sick, but anger was stronger than the nausea. At 1 p.m., the front door opened. Linda stepped out. She was laughing. She was followed by a woman. A woman who looked a lot like Linda, but harder, rougher. It was Brenda. Her sister. The sister who Linda claimed lived in Florida. The sister who I had sent money to for flights twice a year. The sister who I banned from our house 15 years ago because she stole my prescription painkillers and tried to sell them to the neighbor's kid. Brenda was smoking a cigarette on the porch of the house my money bought. Linda was handing her cash. I saw the exchange. Linda reached into her purse and handed Brenda a stack of bills. It all clicked. The roommate speech. The distance. The lack of money. Linda wasn't just hiding money. She was fully supporting Brenda. She had bought Brenda a house. She was paying Brenda's bills. She was feeding Brenda organic steaks while I ate leftovers. And she was planning to leave me. I could see the timeline. The house was almost renovated. Once it was done, Linda would file for divorce. She would try to take half of my assets, claim alimony, and move into the bungalow with her sister. She was setting up her lifeboat before sinking my ship. I took photos. I had a camera with a telephoto lens in my truck. I used it for site inspections. I snapped pictures of the house, the license plates, Linda handing over the cash, Brenda smoking on the porch. I drove straight to a lawyer. My lawyer, a man named Henderson who had handled my company's contracts for years, looked at the photos and the financial records I had compiled. "This is substantial," Henderson said. "This is financial infidelity on a massive scale. If she used marital funds to purchase and maintain this property, it's marital property. It doesn't matter if it's in an LLC or her maiden name. Half of that house is yours. Maybe all of it, considering the fraud." "I don't want the house," I said. "I want her out. I want my retirement back." "We can do that," Henderson said. "But we need to be strategic. Do not tell her you know. Not yet. Let her miss a rent payment. Let her breach the lease agreement you signed. It strengthens our position that you are separated financially." I went home. I played the role. I was the cold roommate. Linda came home at 5 p.m., looking exhausted. "Long day at the store?" I asked. "Exhausting," she lied. "Inventory is a nightmare." "I bet," I said. "By the way, the electric bill was higher this month. Your share is an extra $40. She snapped. "I don't have $40, Mark. You are bleeding me dry." "Maybe you should ask Brenda for a loan," I said. I didn't shout it. I said it quietly. I watched the color drain from her face. It was instant. She looked like she had been shot. "What did you say?" she whispered. "Brenda," I said. "Your sister. The one living at 124 Oak Street. The one you bought a house for with my money. The one you were laughing with today while I was sitting in my truck." She tried to speak, but no words came out. She started to cry. Not the soft crying of a victim, but the ugly panicked sobbing of someone who has been caught. "It's not what you think," she blubbered. She needed help. She was homeless. "She's my sister, Mark. What was I supposed to do?" "You were supposed to tell your husband," I said. "You were supposed to ask me. But you knew I would say no, because Brenda is a leech. So you stole from me. You stole thousands of dollars. You compromised our retirement. You treated me like a bank so you could play savior to a junkie." "She's clean now." Linda screamed. "She's doing better. I'm helping her get back on her feet." "You aren't helping her," I said. "You're enabling her. And you're doing it at my expense. And then you had the nerve, the absolute audacity, to tell me we are roommates? To cut me off emotionally while spending my money on a second household." "I was going to tell you," she sobbed. "Once she was stable." "No, you weren't," I said. "You were fixing up that house so you could move in. That's the plan, isn't it? Divorce me, take half my 401k, and go live with Brenda." She didn't deny it. The silence was the confirmation. "Here is what is going to happen," I said. I laid out the terms Henderson and I had discussed. "You are going to sign a post-nuptial agreement. You are going to waive your right to my 401k. You are going to waive your right to alimony. In exchange, I will not sue you for the fraud. I will not report the hidden assets to the IRS, and we both know you haven't been declaring that rental properly. You get to keep the bungalow. You get to keep Brenda. But you leave this house. You leave my money alone. And we get divorced." "I can't live on just my salary," she wailed. "The bungalow still has taxes. Brenda doesn't work." "Then Brenda better get a job," I said. "Or maybe you can get a second one. Roommates have to hustle, Linda." She fought it for a week. She tried to gaslight me, telling me I was abusive, that I was cruel. She tried to charm me, cooking a lasagna and wearing a dress I used to like. I didn't eat the lasagna. I didn't look at the dress. I looked at the spreadsheet. Eventually, She realized I held all the cards. The photos of her giving cash to Brenda were damning. The paper trail of the stolen money was irrefutable. If we went to court, a judge would tear her apart. She signed the papers. The day she moved out was surreal. She didn't hire movers. Brenda came with that beat-up Honda Civic and a rented trailer. I stood on the porch and watched them load Linda's clothes, her vanity, and her fun money purchases. Brenda glared at me the whole time. She looked older, worn out. She looked like a burden. And now, she was solely Linda's burden. When the last box was loaded, Linda stood at the bottom of the steps. She looked small. The arrogance of the roommate speech was gone. She looked terrified. She realized, perhaps for the first time, that she was walking away from a paid-off house, a secure retirement, and a man who had been loyal to her for 30 years, all to go live in a small bungalow with a sister who would drain her dry within 6 months. "Mark," she said softly. If it doesn't work out." "Don't," I cut her off. "Just don't." "I loved you," she said. "No," I said. "You loved the security I provided. And when you thought you had secured enough of it for yourself, you tried to discard me. Goodbye, Linda." She got in the car. They drove away. I walked back into my house. It was quiet. It was empty. It was mine. I went to the kitchen. I opened the fridge. I took my steak out of the mini fridge in the garage and put it in the main refrigerator. I put my beer on the top shelf. I walked into the living room and sat in my recliner. The next few months were an adjustment. The silence was heavy at first. But then, the bank account started to grow. Without Linda's secret siphoning and her fun money spending, my savings rate tripled. I realized I could retire even earlier than I thought. I sold the big house 6 months later. It was too much space, and the memories were stale. I bought a smaller place, a modern condo downtown near the baseball stadium. I bought season tickets. I started fishing again. I heard from a mutual friend recently. Linda is miserable. The bungalow is too small. Brenda relapsed and stole Linda's jewelry, the stuff she hadn't sold to pay my rent. Linda is working full-time at the boutique now, and she's taken a second job as a waitress at a diner to make ends meet. She asked the friend if I asked about her. I told the friend to tell her the truth. I told her to say that I'm doing great. My new roommate is fantastic. He pays his bills on time, he's quiet, and he loves to fish. My new roommate is me. And we are getting along just fine.